Here are 10 of the most unbelievable survival stories told on Theo Vaughn's podcast. Near-death experiences. Theo Vaughn, with his trademark blend of humor and searching honesty, leaned into the conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Long, a physician who had devoted more than 2 decades to studying near-death experiences, NDEs. For me, watching that exchange wasn't passive. It felt like stepping into a quiet cinema where the story being told wasn't just about death, but about the fragile, luminous boundary of human existence itself.
Today's guest is a practicing physician. He's an author, and he's a researcher into the phenomenon of near-death experiences. He has done the largest case study, over 5,000 cases of near-death experiences, and he wrote the book, Evidence of the Afterlife: The Science of Near-Death Experiences, which is a New York Times best.
Like Theo, I've often wrestled with the finality of death. My instinctive stance leaned on science, death as the ultimate void, consciousness reduced to flickers of dying neurons. But what Dr. Long introduced wasn't mystical vagueness. It was a paradox so sharp it cut through the fabric of that skepticism. He described NDEs as lucid, conscious remembrances occurring when the brain should be utterly incapable of producing them. No blood flow, no electrical activity, EEG flat within seconds. By every known law, thought should not exist in that state. And yet, people report vivid, structured, life-altering experiences.
I ask him, what quantifies near-death experience?
Sure. Now, different researchers have different concepts, but the research definition that I've always used is exactly what the name implies. You're near death. In other words, you're so physically compromised, you're unconscious, or you may be clinically dead with absent heartbeat.
Okay.
Now, at that time, it should be impossible to have any lucid conscious remembrance, and yet people do have that remembrance at that time, and that's the experience part of a near-death experience.
Okay, and why is it at that time that you shouldn't be able to have any lucid brain activity? Why is that?
Sure. Let's talk about what happens to the brain after a cardiac arrest, which means the heart stops beating.
Okay.
The moment the heart stops beating, Theo, obviously, blood immediately stops flowing to the brain.
That's the first moment the tension hit me. Imagine a locked door, one you've always assumed leads nowhere. And then suddenly, you hear voices, coherent, detailed, unmistakably real, coming from the other side. That contradiction isn't just intriguing, it's destabilizing. It forces you to re-examine the script of reality you've always trusted.
Okay, so you create a website where people would go that had had near-death experience.
What gave Dr. Long credibility wasn't just the accounts themselves, but the rigor of his approach. Over 4,000 cases, studied systematically across cultures, religions, and ages. Consistency was the through line. These weren't dream fragments. They were cohesive, ordered experiences. And consistency is the death knell of coincidence. It suggests pattern, and patterns are the language of truth.
Right off the bat, I realized there was overwhelming consistency even in the first few dozen near-death experiences I saw. Everything I knew as a physician told me this is not possible. You can't have highly lucid, conscious experiences when you're unconscious or clinically dead. And yet here, the very first few dozens of people sharing with me very clearly, and what was very impressive is the remarkable consistency of the elements they were describing. What happened during the experience, the elements, or if you will, characteristics.
Okay.
Not only were they very consistently seen across many, many near-death experiences, but they typically occurred in a very consistent and logical order. This is nothing like dreams or hallucinations or any other type of pathologically altered consciousness. I realized very, very quickly, and as I was to learn even more and more with got more and more experiences shared with me, near-death experiences are, in a word,
One story in particular sticks like a scene from a film you can't shake. The woman thrown from her horse, unconscious, who traveled over a mile and overheard conversations in a barn. Later, every detail was verified. How do you explain perception detached from the body? science offers no satisfying framework. But for me, it wasn't about abandoning rational thought. It was about acknowledging that rational thought alone might be too small a lens.
Ample.
Like, what do you mean when you say that? Just before you get to the example, like geographic, like what do you, I'm a little, sorry, I got confused there.
Yeah, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
We had one relatively recent near-death experience. Lady was riding a horse and was out, basically breaking in the horse, and the horse threw her off, and she hit her head. Very severe head injury, immediately unconscious. She had that out-of-body experience, consciousness above her body, saw her body lying on the ground, saw the horse heading back to home, but then her consciousness went to where she had started prior to her journey, the barn, and she was able to hear other people talking, aware of what they were saying, doing. They didn't know that she was fighting for her life over a mile away because they weren't aware of that. They only were aware of that when the horse arrived without her. And again, she was able to see and bring back all that information, verified down to the finest details.
Then came the emotional punch. NDEs are not just about seeing beyond. They're defined by what experiencers feel: peace, calm, love. A staggering 93.8% said that NDEs felt more real than earthly life. That statistic matters because if thousands of people across backgrounds describe the same overwhelming sense of truth, maybe reality isn't limited to the physical stage we see. The comparison to drugs and dreams was another turning point. Hallucinations are chaotic, illogical, often terrifying. NDEs, by contrast, are hyper-lucid, structured, profoundly meaningful. That distinction matters because it resists easy dismissal. As Dr. Long put it, NDEs don't collapse under the weight of scientific scrutiny. They intensify it.
It's a common thing. People so hovering kind of outside of themselves. So people leaving their physical realm, right? You leave, and I guess, do they feel okay being away from themselves? Do they feel like, jeepers, I got to get back into myself, like when you lost your phone or something,
Yeah.
Or does it feel like, that's what I would be like, gosh, because if I'm just milling around, it's almost like you're just naked, like you're as naked as you could be. You're naked down to your soul.
That's a good assumption, and I kind of wondered about that too early in my research. But amazingly, even though these people are unconscious or clinically dead and may have had, severe trauma or illness problems that led to that episode of unconsciousness, when that consciousness separates from their physical body, they essentially never describe any pain. It's unusual for them to feel fear about consciousness apart from their body. Far more commonly described is a sense of calm, a sense of peace, a sense, amazingly, that this is actually their real conscious self, that being non-physical and apart from their body down.
But the most cinematic revelation came from the edges. Blind individuals describing vision for the first time. Children with no religious framework reporting the same patterns. And the hauntingly beautiful accounts of shared NDEs, two people experiencing the same out-of-body state together. Those aren't just anomalies, they're narrative crescendos. They force the question, if consciousness can exist apart from the body, what does that say about what we are?
Dude, one thing that stood out in your book, I remember reading that that there was that blind people had similar near-death experiences.
Absolutely.
To people of sight.
That is a very good point, Theo. I interviewed Vicky. Vicky was born totally blind.
Oh, wow.
To
so
her,
she's really all in.
Oh, to Vicky, vision was unknown and unknowable. I interviewed her, and you simply cannot explain vision, how we see, in terms of the remaining other four senses.
Ooh.
What struck me most wasn't just what these experiences revealed about death, but what they demanded about life. Again and again, NDEs emphasized love, connection, and compassion. It isn't about possession, status, or fear. It's about the ripples of kindness we leave behind. That's not just spiritual comfort, it's actionable wisdom. It reframes how we measure success, how we interact with others, and how we face our own mortality. Maybe the greatest lesson of NDEs isn't about death at all. Maybe it's about how to live. Chasing stories. Across from Theo Vaughn sat Mariana Van Zeller, the kind of journalist who doesn't just chase stories, she chases truths that most of us would rather keep hidden. For over 2 decades, Mariana has traveled into the shadows, the kind of places that governments pretend don't exist, but quietly shape almost 40% of the global marketplace.
I've been covering the cartel for many years now and have traveled extensively throughout Mexico, namely Sinaloa. I've reported more from Sinaloa, Mexico than anywhere else in the world, and have, reported on the drug trade as well. But I'd seen the presence of the cartel here in the U.S., which is why I decided I wanted to do a story about what exactly that means, how much of it is it that here, how widespread it is, and what's that mean for the country. But like in small little city towns, they're operating in many cases and have these drug distribution centers out of small town America. We interviewed a couple of investigators from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations who were called because there had been a gruesome murder of a woman who'd been tortured. Her fingers were cut off by pliers, one by one, in a bathtub. She was basically killed while still conscious and alive with a...
What makes Van Zeller unique is not just her courage, though that alone would be enough to cement her reputation. It's her method. She doesn't kick down doors or arrive with armed escorts. She doesn't put herself above the people she meets. Instead, she sits down and she listens and she tries to understand. It's a philosophy that turns her into less of a reporter and more of a translator, someone who can bridge the gap between the ordinary viewer and the extraordinary chaos of black markets. One of her most haunting stories didn't unfold in a dusty cartel town in Mexico or a war-torn village overseas. It happened in Georgia, America. There, she uncovered how a cartel boss, calling shots from within a prison cell, orchestrated the torture and killing of a woman. The setting was familiar, domestic, and unremarkable, but the crime was chillingly global. It's a reminder that cartel influence isn't some distant problem over there. It seeps into local neighborhoods, into places that look like your own hometown.
And this is because her cartel boss, she was a drug runner, and her boss, who was in prison, by the way, all ordered through prison on a cell phone. He was giving the orders on a cell phone live, and he believed that she had stolen some drugs. Turns out it was not the case. But this was in small town Georgia, like the last place you'd expect to see this kind of violence. But it's starting to come here as well. So they use, and I have seen this throughout my reporting, in whether we're talking about sort of smaller sheriff offices to border patrol, corruption is actually here. And it's a big tool that they use to be able to continue their...
From Georgia, Van Zeller takes us to Vietnam, where a very different but equally heartbreaking economy has taken root. China's gender imbalance, the result of decades of the one-child policy and cultural preference for sons, has fueled an industry of stolen brides. Women are abducted from neighboring countries, trafficked, and sold into forced marriages across the border. One woman's story, which Mariana shared, carries the kind of quiet devastation that lingers long after the screen goes dark. These aren't statistics. They're human lives, bent and broken by markets that thrive in the cracks of desperation and demand.
And the stories we heard were so sad. I mean, this woman who was trafficked, in some cases, again, the families actually sell them. I don't believe it was a case with this woman. She was trafficked. She arrived in this apartment in the big city in China, and she was immediately locked in a room. And the husband would rape her, would come in, and then she got pregnant, and then they took the baby. As soon as she gave birth, took the baby away from her, and then she got another baby, and then took the baby away from her, and then she was obviously depressed, thinking of committing suicide, awful. And she, at that point, had given them 2 children. The grandparents were living in the house, too, and taking care of the kids. And she convinced them to let her go see her family in Vietnam, who she hadn't seen for like 6 years. And she did. And she had to make the decision, do I go and see my parents in Vietnam and leave my kids behind, or do I stay here as a kidnapped victim in a way that I can still have a relationship with her kids?
Wow.
And so it was awful because she chose to go back to Vietnam knowing full well that she will never see her kids again. And she was showing me photos, and it was just heartbreaking. It was.
But perhaps the most disturbing part of her reporting is that the rot isn't limited to places far away. Even within the United States, black markets flourish under polished veneers. In Arizona, she exposed a wave of rehab scams that preyed on Native Americans and other vulnerable groups. Families desperate for help sent loved ones to what they thought were healing centers. Instead of patients, they were locked away in warehouses masquerading as clinics. There, instead of treatment, they were given alcohol and drugs, tools of control that ensured dependency. Meanwhile, insurance companies were billed billions of dollars for phantom services. The scam was so elaborate and so profitable that it became less about helping people recover and more about squeezing every possible dollar out of their pain.
And so this season, we decided to really try to investigate what was happening. And we started our reporting in Arizona, where basically there are all these sort of rehab clinics that are there to exploit Native Americans, mainly Native Americans, because I know, it's really horrible. Native Americans get access to healthcare easier, much easier than non-Native Americans in the state. It was something that started during COVID, where you can just basically call the health department and say, this is my name, this is my Native American ID number, and they will give you insurance just like that. It was to make it easier for them. But what has happened because of it is that now they're seen as targets, as prizes for these black market rehab operators that set up the.
You can hear in her voice that these are not just pieces for a show. They're encounters with real human suffering. The danger for her and her team is never theoretical. There are militias patrolling the U.S. border, armed with rifles and fueled with paranoia, convinced they're protecting the nation from invaders. There are cartels willing to silence anyone who threatens their flow of money. There are scam artists who see exposing them as a direct threat to their survival. Every time she steps into one of these environments, Mariana is gambling with her life. Yet, she does it because the stories matter, because pulling back the curtain matters. What struck Theo Vaughn and resonates with so many who watch her is that Mariana doesn't portray these markets as nests of monsters. Instead, she forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. These black markets thrive because systems are broken. Cartels expand where governments fail. Scammers flourish where oversight collapses. Traffickers exploit where desperation festers. In other words, it's not just about bad people doing bad things. It's about conditions like poverty, corruption, greed, and neglect that make those bad things not only possible, but very profitable.
The way I rationalize it basically is that, putting the story out there and being able to gain access to these worlds and showing why this is happening, I'm hoping that then we are holding power accountable. We're telling those people in power that this is happening and trying to change the system, because at the end of the day, for me, it's not so much that people are broken, it's that the systems are broken, the systems that allow these things to happen. Whether we talk about immigration, or we've reported on fake pharmaceuticals and how the Mexican cartel and groups in India are making these really dangerous, deadly pharmaceuticals that Americans, like 20 million Americans, cannot afford medication. Their own that they need life-saving medication sometimes, and so they're having to resort to online pharmacies in India or going down to Mexico to these border pharmacies, and a lot of times that stuff is deadly and tainted with other drugs and other chemicals. And what does that tell me? It doesn't tell me. It tells me that people are exploiting a broken system, and it's our responsibility and our government that has allowed this to happen. Why is it that 20 million Americans can't afford life-saving treatment, right?
Yeah.
What does it say about us more than what does it say about the guy in India who's making these drugs?
Here's where the story shifts from just being fascinating to being deeply unsettling. Ben Zeller's reporting suggests that we, the ordinary public, are not as separate from those underworlds as we'd like to believe. Every time someone buys cheap counterfeit goods, every time someone looks the other way at shady business practices, every time governments prioritize profit over protection, the shadows grow stronger. Her work is a mirror, reflecting back to us the uncomfortable reality that no one is born a criminal. They're born human and then shaped, distorted, and hardened by the systems we all participate in, whether directly or indirectly. And here's my take. That perspective is both terrifying and hopeful. Terrifying because it means there's no easy enemy to point to. You can't simply lock up a few drug lords and declare victory, because 10 more will rise in the vacuum left behind. You can't stop trafficking by building taller walls, because the demand and desperation will simply find another route. The problem is systematic, but it's also hopeful, because if these markets are shaped by systems, then systems can also be reshaped. It means reform, accountability, and compassion aren't just lofty ideals. They're practical tools in the fight against exploitation.
So most people don't know this, but 38% of our global economy are these gray and black markets. It's what economists call the hidden third.
Wait, what are you saying?
That almost 38% of the global economy are these black and gray markets.
38% of the global economy, of the GDP of Earth?
So the drug trade alone is estimated at between $600 to $800 billion. That's more than many GDPs put together. Scams, last year alone, they went up, I think it was $12.5 billion were scammed from Americans last year alone. That industry has been growing every single year.
Think about the rehab scams in Arizona. At their root, they're thriving not just because of greedy operators, but because the healthcare system was already flawed, already too easy to manipulate, already stacked against vulnerable communities. Fixing that system, tightening oversight, valuing people over profit, does more to dismantle the scam than throwing one or two fraudsters in jail. Or take the stolen brides in Vietnam. That economy exists because of a demand rooted in cultural and political systems in China. Tackling the root causes gender imbalance, social pressures, economic disparity, which is infinitely harder than just raiding one trafficking ring. But if ignored, the demand will keep fueling the supply.
Legal. And what we decided is, Sam Hall, who's the leader of this militia, we spent a night with him and seeing his work. And, I'm not saying that what they're trying to accomplish, they believe the country is being invaded. They decided that they wanted to do. I'm a strong believer. Our government is broken, particularly when it comes to immigration policy. But I'm a strong believer in holding our country accountable. It's very much part of the work that I do, instead of arming myself and training for war and going down there
I agree with that.
to scare little girls and kids. And
Van Zeller's stories revealed this. Black markets aren't out there. They're not exotic anomalies. They're logical outcomes of human flaws, human needs, and human failures. And that's why her work is so vital. She doesn't just show us the darkness. She shows us the connections, the invisible strings tying those underground economies to our everyday lives. The shadows are not separate from us. They are us, twisted by systems we built, ignored, or allowed to rot. And if we want to change the story, we have to stop pretending that the darkness is elsewhere. We have to start admitting it's in the mirror. Survival. The stories ahead are not for the faint of heart. Christopher Curtis, a retired sergeant from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and former crisis negotiator, carries with him decades of encounters with humanity at its most chaotic and, at times, its most broken.
How did Tony Shea die?
So I'm not very comfortable speaking about specifically how he died. I know there was an incident where there was a fire and he was inside the fire, and I believed it was related to something about being inside the building with the fire. Because I wasn't with the company when that happened. That was sometime after the company. And it got to a point where after I retired and I had, throughout the years of dealing with so much death and all the craziness on the police department, I just tuned everything out. I really didn't engage with people if it wasn't a positive experience. And then it became a point where I was just like a solitary person. So I wasn't really very intimately involved in the details to how he died, but that's kind of like the gist of it.
Curtis's lens on humanity was shaped by extremes. One night, he's pulling a crying child from the arms of a mother lost to methamphetamine. The girl's sobs sounding, in his words, like her heart was being torn out of her body. Another night, he's stumbling into the surreal, a uniformed security guard in a XXX theater, caught in a compromising act. And then there were the tragedies that etched themselves into permanence. A father found dead in a hotel room after hiring a prostitute. A family portrait on the nightstand staring back like a final accusation.
People all the time.
I got to see, I would go to a single wide trailer at 3 a.m., ladies completely tweaked out of her mind. And her kids are awake, all nasty, crying. The neighbors have called, spaghetti sauce on the walls. And I'd be pissed at the mother. And what happened throughout my career is I ended up seeing that little girl that I was trying to protect becoming the parent of a kid in the same type of situation. It's just cyclical, And then for the police to be judgmental, I found that to be incredibly disheartening for me. And in fact, if there's anything I think back in my life, it is if ever I treated another human being improperly, or if I didn't spend time with my children when I could have spent time with my children. It makes me get emotional sometimes when I can think of specific situations. I'll tell you a story, man. There was one time where I took a little girl from her mom.
And this is in Vegas?
This is in Vegas. Oh yeah, all my police stuff is in Vegas. There was one time that the mom was completely took out. She was slamming speed, and she was just up and just doing all kinds of stuff. And the neighbors was at some point called.
Yeah, slamming speed is injecting it?
Yeah, it's injecting it.
Okay.
And so I go there, and I remember I had to take the little girl from her mom. And this girl was crying in such a way, I recorded this, that it was almost as if someone was literally, though I wasn't, pulling her heart out of her body. Now, mind you, that's a kid who loves their mom no matter what.
Yeah.
You love your parent in spite of, right? And I'll always remember in my mind that I have to learn to look at other people not only the way that I'd want to be treated, but through the experiences that I've had. That's how I look at people now. Once you get older, you can start to get emotional about just the simplest of things.
Oh, yeah.
Death was a constant companion. Officers coped in strange ways. Curtis remembers a colleague playing video poker beside a hanging victim, clinging to distraction to blunt the horror. On domestic violence calls, he saw cycles repeat until one night, a recall ended with a mother shot in the face by her ex-husband, her children's screams echoing a question.
Personally?
One time I was on a call where a guy hung himself, and I was second to arrive, and there was another cop in there, and the guy was there. He had cut him down but left the ligature around his neck because they didn't want to make sure that it was actually a suicide. And the guy was just dead, and the cop was there playing with the guys, because a lot of people in Vegas have those video poker, little handheld video poker things. Because this was, people don't do it on their phone. And the cop was just sitting there. He was like, just talking to me like, yeah. And the guy was dead there. And I'm talking about stuff from the beginning of my career more so. Because I think that really kind of formulated how my mind looked at death. And, it's evolved some, but those things stand out in my mind. And I was like, how's this cop sitting here playing this video game? And I was like, that's why he's playing the video game.
Right.
That's why he's playing the video game, because he's got to sit up here with this guy.
He needs an escape. Yeah, would you want to sit here and look and just keep taking the guy's pulse? Or it would be hard. It would be crazy if he's sitting there.
Yeah,
doing anything else besides trying to occupy his brain.
That same time period in my career, it also taught me a lot about what we do with our loved ones at the last moment. There was a recall. On domestics, you get a lot of recalls. There was this lady.
Okay, and on domestics, you mean by
domestic violence? Yes,
domestic violence, and there was a recall. You said
it's a recall. A lot of times, you end up having to go back to the same address multiple times.
Okay, so that's a recall. So we got to recall back out to so and so.
And I remember it was really, really pretty, kind of I'm guessing that because I was maybe in my early 20s, I'm going to guess this lady was about 30 something, really, really pretty light skinned black lady. And she had some kids and she had recently been divorced. And so she got the 2 kids. It was a son and a daughter. The daughter was about 14 and the son was about maybe 9. And I'm just guessing these ages. Yeah. And I remember these kids would like be so mean to their mom because the divorce caused them to pick sides because the mom ended up with the custody of the kids. And the dad was a pretty violent guy, and she would always call if he was coming through. And I remember going, and the kids were just so mean to their mom. After maybe the 3rd recall, there was a call to the residence. I was just about to get off on Graveyard of gunfire. And I showed up, and the mom was laying on the sidewalk, shot in the face by the dad. And the kids were screaming, "My mom, what am I going to do without my mom?" I mean, just screaming. You can feel that go through your whole body.
As a crisis negotiator, Curtis walked the razor's edge between life and death. Some encounters ended with a gun lowered, a life spared. Others revealed darker truths. A man he talked out of suicide later found to be hoarding child pornography. He wrestled with the moral weight. Had he saved a life or prolonged harm? Even victories carried a shadow. A coroner's inquest after a suicide by cop left him shaken when the deceased sister, through tears, reminded the room, "He was still my brother. Someone loved him."
So because the story that you told me reminded me of this story where I negotiated this guy. So I get a call. I was a sergeant actually at the time. So I ended up negotiating because I was part of this crisis intervention team.
Okay.
So I go from Southeast Area Command all the way to downtown. It was Valentine's Day, February 14th. A lot of people end up attempting or committing, we'll say 405. Our term for that, unlivening themselves, is 405.
Okay.
They 405 on these holidays or at cemeteries sometimes. But this guy's on Fremont Street, about 14th and Fremont, walking up and down. And he's got a gun in his hand. And so they pull me into the scene. They put me in a car, and I'm like, the guy was like maybe about 12 or 13 feet that way when we first drove by. I'm like, dang on, bro, you're going to drive me this close?
So close, yeah.
He was so close. But they end up pulling behind this because it was really kind of a haphazard thing because the patrol officers pulled up on him. No one called. I think the patrol officer pulls up, so the perimeter was set up kind of weird. So we pull up, and I get to a safe distance behind, and so I start on the PA talking to the guy.
So you're the negotiator.
So I'm talking to the guy. I'm the responsible, right?
Okay.
And so I'm saying to him, and then I look at the guy. He looks kind of Latino. So then I start saying, I said maybe I say it in Spanish. So then in Spanish I start giving, saying to him, listen, giving him the whole thing, right? And he keeps starting to raise the fire, and I keep going like this because all these got officers with their rifles on him and I'm like, this guy's gonna get, and I can see him talking to him. And then one time he lifts, they light him up. So we all just run across the street. And these weird things happen when you're in a very critical situation like that. I remember one of the first things I noticed was that his pinky was shot off. And when I first got up to him. So we get the scene calmed down. And then I see also in his boot, he had a Derringer, a little small 22 Derringer. The gun that he had was not real. It was a replica firearm, if I recall. It was a pellet, something like that. This is what's called suicide by cop. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
Now I am. Now I totally understand it. They trick you into shooting them.
Right, because they don't want to do it themselves.
What?
Yes, some people, remember, for religious reasons, they feel like if they kill themselves, that's the last act that they committed.
Right.
Vegas's underworld wasn't confined to drugs and despair. Prostitution flourished, with pimps running track girls on the streets and others embedded inside casinos. The city's officers weren't immune to temptation. Stories of affairs, misconduct, and careers destroyed by lapse in judgment illustrated how the environment tested everyone, not just those they policed.
What in Vegas? Yeah, you run across. Everybody's there to have the craziest time.
Yes.
Right? Everybody's there to have, bonkers times. And I'm sure, and there's tons of prostitution, sex work, girls who are just partying for money. I mean, there's everything there.
The prostitution in Vegas is just off the meter.
Is it?
A lot of people think that it's legal in Vegas. It's not legal in Vegas. It's legal a little bit north in Nye County. You can go to there's a chicken ranch and there's other places that people can go. But in Vegas, it's illegal. It's a misdemeanor, but it's still illegal. But inside the clubs, inside the casinos, I mean, there's tons of girls who are working, and most of them, not most of them, a lot of them.
The streets have taught brutal lessons about guns, children killed in accidents, athletes ending lives with careless displays, officers forced into split-second decisions. Curtis himself was involved in 2 shootings, including one where he killed a man wielding a replica gun. Almost immediately, the narrative shifted to race. Despite his own mixed background, it underscored how in policing, perception often mattered more than fact, and how quickly the public needed villains and victims. But beneath the adrenaline, Curtis insists the job always came back to humanity. His philosophy evolved from ask, tell, make, to persuade, advise, and warn, a shift inspired by the principles of Sir Robert Peel. Policing at its core wasn't about domination, but communication. He recalled a rookie mistake that nearly cost him his life, showing kindness to a suspect who, unknown to him, carried a hidden knife. That moment of humanity may have spared him, teaching him that words often cut deeper than weapons.
But it looks bad when I'm part of the responsible party of keeping that area safe. And if you have a prostitution situation going on, either something else is going to occur, connected to that. There's either she's going to get beat up or she's going to steal his money. A lot of times they would do that to guys. If they felt like they could take their money because they weren't, the guy wouldn't report it to the police. That would happen for people who wanted to buy drugs too. You would get these kids from the Midwest to come there, or they're in Vegas. Okay, we go down on Fremont. Let's go buy some whatever they want to buy. And I'm going to fill in the blank of whatever drug it could be. And they would just rob them. They would give them whatever and they'd say, go. Call the police if you, and then what are they going to do? They're not going to call the police. And then you got all of this crap going on and it looks bad. It's like, why are tax dollars paying for the police if we're not going to keep the area clear? So I think to answer your question, what I would do mostly is I would leave the prostitutes alone with the exception of, interacting with them to say, hey, it's time to clear out.
Do officers respond to in-casino activities or do in-casino security respond to those? So that it's not a public thing.
Right. So the casino security are pretty high level. They're pretty well trained. They handle what they can, but they can't arrest anyone. So if it's a felony, we have to come and take care of it. For most misdemeanors, a lot of times they would give a person a warning. I got called to casinos a lot of times for a lot of different things. I mean, because, people get drunk, high. I told you if we have dead bodies, obviously the police have to respond to dead bodies.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, but a lot of times people die in these casinos.
What did they die? Overdoses, probably.
A lot of times it's over.
The mental toll of years on the force left scars. The story of his former lieutenant, Hans Walters, who killed his wife, child, and then himself, still chills him. Walters' final words weren't a plea to God, but simply, "Forgive me," a recognition of an unforgivable act. Curtis also spoke of Timothy Blackburn, another man who murdered his family rather than lose custody. These tragedies weren't just headlines to him. They were reminders of how fragile the line is between protector and perpetrator when the mind fractures.
My goal is to figure out how I can do that. One of my lieutenants, I think you guys have the audio on this, one of my lieutenants, 405, and there's audio of it. This is horrific story.
Las Vegas cop shot wife and 5-year-old son before unaliving himself. Okay.
Yes. So this guy was my lieutenant, and you can play the audio if you want, and he tells everything right here, and I'll give you a little bit of background afterwards.
Okay.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi.
And what's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
My name is Hans Walters. I work for Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I just shot and killed my son, Max, and my wife, Michelle. And I killed her because she's in such chronic pain from her neck and back and on more medicines and she's not going to survive. And we were both seeing therapist and psychologist in Boulder City. His name is and I feel terrible for doing it.
Okay,
I
and
don't have a choice out. Please don't interrupt me, please.
Okay.
I've also set the house on fire, and
09.
if the fire department comes to my house, because there's a fire hydrant right in front of my house, I'm going to open fire on them. So I have to wait till the house is burning, and then I'm going to shoot myself. Okay? So
Okay,
I don't ask me any questions. This is real. This isn't a joke. The fire alarms in the background is because I set the garage and the bedroom on fire. My wife's in the bedroom. I shot her in the head. My son, unfortunately, is in the living room watching Oswald, and I shot him in the head, too. And, forgive me for my sins. Please don't call back. Thank you.
Now, years removed from the badge, Curtis reflects differently. Age has brought empathy back where cynicism once lived. He advises ordinary people to guard against the small sparks that ignite disaster. Avoid road rage, never drink and drive, cut people slack. He jokes about carrying a clown nose to diffuse anger behind the wheel. But beneath the humor is hard-won wisdom. Most tragedies are avoidable if we simply choose patience, compassion, and restraint. People are fragile, systems fail, and in the gaps, chaos grows. Yet, even in the darkest corners of Las Vegas, Curtis found evidence of something worth holding on to. Moments of humanity, flickering like neon in the desert night, reminding us that empathy may be the only shield we truly have. The Death Investigator. Death has a way of reminding us that life is both fragile and brutally honest. Few people see that truth as closely, as intimately, as someone like Toby Savoie, a death investigator in Lafayette, Louisiana. For 18 years, he's been the one who gets the call no one else wants to answer. The call that says, "We've got a subject."
I don't know, but it happens often. I had a guy cutting the grass at a rent house and found a body.
God. And did he get any intel, or he just got lucky?
No, he just got lucky. He was cutting grass, and boom, he found that body.
A lot of times, if you work and stay focused and you keep working towards, it's better than some lazy dude who's doing nothing finding a body.
Right.
At least that guy's out there
Right.
doing something.
Well, when that lazy person finds a body, you got to question, how'd you find this body?
True, right.
You know,
Yeah. That's a good point.
We had one recently that was just a driver was passing by, and there was a lady in the ditch. Now, what was interesting was her arms were removed. She was a Mexican female.
Damn, that's interesting.
So they removed her arms because of her tattoos. So this was
the killer did.
This was a hit job. Correct. And they didn't want her identified, so they see this in a ditch and they call us. And then we got to figure out, well, where's the arms? So there's interesting cases like that where people just, they right time, right place, and they find bodies.
Think about that word for a moment. Subject. Not a name, not a person, just a subject. That's where the work begins. Turning what's left behind into a story, into answers, into closure. But as Toby shares, it's not just about the body, it's about the scene, the refrigerator, the photos, the silence in the room. Sometimes the story is as simple as a frail body finally giving in to age. Other times, it's a puzzle. Blood on the wall, a hog's head in the fridge, and cracklins cooking in the oven. At first glance, it screams foul play. At second glance, it whispers something else. A lifestyle, a rhythm of choices that led to an inevitable end.
The sheriff's office and law enforcement,
They worry about that.
They worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, we all look around the scene to see if we find anything, because there could be evidence on those arms. But many times they go, unfound.
Oh gosh, it'd be crazy.
Yeah, I had a guy find a foot once. It was from a fatality, but they called me, and this was, weeks later. Hey, we found a foot. Would you come pick it up? They don't want to touch it even, so I throw a bag in my car and I go grab a foot. It's a different lifestyle,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if I get pulled over, carrying anything, yeah, man, I got a foot in my car.
Yeah, bro. I got a 10.5 in the trunk.
That's the strange thing about death investigation. It forces you to see the life in reverse. You don't look forward, you look backward, asking, how did this person's story get here? And yet what Toby reveals isn't just morbid, it's a mirror. If you pause here and think about your own life, isn't it true that some cycles, maybe not as dark, maybe not as tragic, still pull on us the same way? Habits we inherit, decisions we repeat. In that sense, a coroner's report isn't just about death, it's about the echo of living patterns. And then there's fentanyl, the ghost that stalks modern America. Toby has watched overdoses go from once in a while to every single day. He describes it like a macabre math equation. Fentanyl is stronger, cheaper, easier to smuggle, and impossible to spot once it's pressed into a pill. A half Xanax to relax? A fake Adderall before an exam? That half pill can be the last thing you ever take.
There was always like a poly drug abuse, meaning multiple drugs being used. But those were still rare at the time. We didn't get as many overdoses as we do now. I miss crack. The crack days were so much easier than the fentanyl days.
Because why is that?
Because it's that much more lethal.
Crack is?
Yeah.
Oh, fentanyl.
Fentanyl is much more, the crack epidemic was a thing. But then when the pain epidemic hit, that's when we really started losing people.
So what's the difference between like a crack death and a fentanyl death?
Well, I mean, it's basically going to be a cardiac event. Fentanyl, you stop breathing. That's a very powerful drug. Back to the opioid. The docs were giving out medication, people were getting addicted, and then the government came in and stopped it. And they just cut everybody off. And they made it to where physicians could get in a lot of trouble if they overprescribed. And then I think they came back after that just recently and said, hey, we didn't mean not to treat people with pain. Because then you have a lot of people turning to heroin. When you're taking opiates and you're on them for, 5 or 6 years and you're addicted, and then one day you just can't get any.
And here's the chilling part. When someone dies from fentanyl, other users don't run away from that batch, they run toward it. Like squirrels rushing to the same tree that killed one of their own. Convinced that it was strong enough to end a life, then it must deliver the real high. That image alone should stop us cold. But this is where Toby's reflection adds weight. Death investigators don't just catalog tragedy. They carry it. They replay it. They live with it. Imagine walking into a home and seeing a Christmas note from a 13-year-old girl, and all she wrote, her one wish, was for her mom, long gone, never coming back. That's not a scene. That is a scar.
A 13-year-old girl taught me more that night than, still to this day, when it was right around Christmas, and I can remember having to take them to the ER to show them their mother. And it was tough. She said, Mr. Toby, all I want for Christmas is my mom. And, we put so much effort into Christmas and presents and holidays, and here I have this 13-year-old girl. It really puts things into perspective for you, and still to this day, I do my job because I was able to save my best friend's life by being able to remove him when he was depressed. Suicide is real, and he ended up getting help, and I had to help him.
To cope, Toby leans on dark humor with his team. He blasts Alice in Chains on the way to a call, then Counting Crows or gospel on the way back. He admits his kids had grown desensitized. They hear the stories. They see the blood-stained gear in the fridge. And yet, for all the horror, what Toby keeps circling back to is simple. Life is fragile. Every day is a gift. It's not a cliche when it comes from someone who pronounces death daily. That's earned wisdom. And if there's one through line in this story, it's this. Most deaths, in one way or another, could have been prevented. Drive the safer highway, not the quick 2-lane. Don't drink and ride an ATV. Don't co-sleep with a baby in your arms, no matter how innocent it feels in the moment. Don't let anger or pride or stubbornness take the wheel. Toby once joked about carrying a clown nose in the car. So when someone cuts him off, you put it on. Look in the mirror and laugh at yourself instead of exploding in rage. Silly? Sure. But maybe that silly act is the difference between a fender bender and a funeral.
We had a young guy died. He was punched once. And it was a hard enough hit, and he collapsed and hit the cement, and that's really unfortunate. But again, it doesn't take much, you know?
Life's pretty fragile. Does it seem like that?
It really is. It really is. Every day's a gift, man. Some of the things we get frustrated with our family and friends are not worth the frustration, because they may not be here tomorrow, or you won't be here tomorrow, you know, and I learned that.
Yeah, have you learned that? Has that had a big effect on you? That's really fascinating. Yeah, you're like, this is not a big deal.
Yeah, it's really not. You know, you could be pumping gas and a tire flies off a car and takes you out, you know. I've had, you know, single trees fall on cars, you know, just the most bizarre things, but when God's ready for it.
Even COVID-19 added its layer of chaos. Toby recalls the relentless nights, the lack of protective gear, officers fashioning homemade masks, the way lungs would stiffen like stone. He wasn't reading headlines. He was filling notebooks with the names of the dead, one after another. And still, at the end of each shift, he'd sit outside his own house, letting the virus settle on his skin before stepping inside, because he refused to carry death across his threshold to his family. You see, that's the paradox of his job. You spend every day neck deep in mortality, and somehow you come out valuing life even more. Toby admits he stopped sweating the small stuff, petty frustrations, minor setbacks, the things most of us lose sleep over. He just shrugs off. Because once you've carried a dead infant in a duffel bag, or driven through a snowstorm with a severed foot in an ice chest, your bar for what matters changes forever.
And you guys, police officers, it's just a position where, you know, it's not very rewarding, and you catch a lot of people on their worst day.
Absolutely. The worst days.
Yeah. Nobody calls like, hey, coroner,
yeah.
we're having a great time over here.
Right. Like I said, I can't go have a cup of coffee with a friend without them thinking that you know, they did.
Bad news,
you know,
showing
small
up,
town, you know?
Yeah, dude, you're almost like that plink, like that, like a roulette ball, you know?
Yeah.
You just drive around a neighborhood and then you stop wherever you want.
Especially during COVID, you know?
God, you could park anywhere and somebody's dead.
I just stayed home. I mean, it was like Monty Python, you know? Bring out your dead, you know? But I'm not dead yet. Yeah. I mean, that's what it was. That, you know, it. Yeah.
No,
it's an interesting field, for sure.
Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming in, man. I appreciate you spending time, and just really nice of you, dude. This has been cool to learn about. You know, I think we like to just learn from different occupations and stuff, and so now I know a lot more about what a coroner does.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and somebody has to do it, and you know, we try to get the job done as compassionately and as we can. Yeah, you know, so really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, you're the guy that does it, man. Toby.
And maybe that's the greatest takeaway from his stories. Not the gore, not the tragedy, not even the warning about fentanyl or drunk drivers. The takeaway is perspective. Every case file, every scene, every phone call he's answered is like a sermon with the same closing line. You don't know how long you've got. So, what do you do with that? That's the question Toby leaves hanging in the air. Because death investigators like him don't get to tie stories up neatly. They don't get happy endings. What they get are wake-up calls. Harsh, uncomfortable, unshakable wake-up calls.
For myself or my family. Because, there's a lot of dangerous turns out there these days, and it's up to the individual, really, in the end, you know, to try and put themselves in the best situation, especially when our country or our laws and stuff like that aren't even going to do that anymore for us. You know?
Right.
So.
And the real challenge for us, the listeners, the audience, the ones watching, is what we'll do with those calls. Do we change the way we drive, the way we parent, the way we treat strangers? Do we pause to breathe before anger takes control? Do we stop putting off the love, the forgiveness, the thank you that tomorrow might not give us the chance to say? That's the heartbeat under Toby's words. That's the reflection worth carrying. Because in the end, his work isn't just about death. It's about teaching the rest of us how to live and maybe survive life itself. The Death Planner. The world of death care is one that most people spend their lives avoiding. We don't like to think about it. We don't like to talk about it, and certainly don't want to imagine the processes that come after we take our final breath. But for Frank Giles, a mortician working out of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, the dark arts, as he calls them, are not only a profession, they are a calling.
So it doesn't matter if it's at a house or a hospital or a nursing home, wherever that person dies, we've got to go.
You have to go to that locale.
We've got to go to that location. And most of the time, see, I'm in a small community in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We don't have people that, take bodies to the morgue, and we don't pick them up in the morning. When they call us, we're rolling that immediately.
Oh, it's a one-stop shop over there with you guys.
That's right. So if you call us at 2 o'clock in the morning, we've got an answering service that answers our phone at night. And so they're going to take down all the information, and then they're going to call us. We're going to wake up, from dead sleep. We're going to put our suits on. We're going to go to the funeral home, get the hearse, and then we're...
Unlike the corporate funeral industry, Giles has built his career on what he describes as a concierge approach to death. When a family loses someone, he doesn't simply process paperwork and hand over a casket catalog. He steps in as a guide, counselor, and craftsman in one of the most difficult journeys humans face, saying goodbye. And that journey often begins in the middle of the night. Giles is on call 24/7, ready to sacrifice holidays, weekends, or personal time at a moment's notice. Somebody's dying, he says, and that's where I'm pretty much staying. There's something brutally grounding in that statement. While most of us plan our days around convenience, his schedule is tethered to the unpredictable rhythm of mortality.
But I've taken as many as 4 or 5 people out to one house, to get a body, or, to a hospital, to make sure that we can get the body back.
And how do you guys just like everybody, like on the count of 3, let's lift, like that kind of deal? Or are the bodies hard when you get there, or are they still soft?
It depends on how long they've been dead. Sometimes they're still warm, they're still soft and warm. Sometimes they've already gone into rigor mortis, and that's where they kind of stiffen up. But, in the funeral industry, one of the things that you will use more than most is a clean white sheet. When we go, we'll take a white sheet, and it doesn't have to be white, but any type of sheet, we'll roll it under them and everything, get a sheet under them so we can lift up on the sheet. We've got other devices that are designed to do that have handles. So if you've got a large person that, that are rated for, 500 to 1,000 pounds and everything, so that you can, because that's the thing about a deceased person is they are what's considered dead weight.
Wow.
And so, but if you've got something with handles that you can use, it makes lifting it a whole lot easier.
Okay, so sometimes if it's a real big dog or a real big gal, you got to really get that tarp under them or something real sturdy.
That's right. You've got to get some type of body mover under them so that you can lift them up and get them to your mortuary cot.
And what's the biggest person you think you've ever retrieved out there?
Probably just under 600 pounds.
Man, that's big, huh?
It usually starts with a phone call, a hospice nurse, a hospital administrator, or a nursing home staffer. The language is often stripped of emotion, reduced to phrases like expired patient or client in need of services. Behind those sterile words is the raw reality of a family that has just lost someone they love. In rural communities like Hopkinsville, there's no middleman morgue service. Giles and his team are the one-stop shop. When the call comes in, they roll immediately, and it's never a solo operation. They always work in pairs, not just for safety, but because the realities of house calls are unpredictable. the body might be lying peacefully in bed or slumped in a bathroom. Sometimes it weighs 100 pounds. Sometimes it's closer to 600. Dead weight isn't just a figure of speech. Giles has moved individuals who tip the scales just under 600 pounds. And that's when tools, body movers, clean white sheets, and sheer willpower become essential. There's no glamour in this part of the job. It's sweat, strain, and respect, all rolled into one.
The size of the person and how new the crematory is.
Like a grandparent, though, how much you think?
Oh, you're probably a little over an hour.
Damn. And what about what about that 600-pounder?
Now, see, that's different because you think of somebody that's 600 pounds and the fat that's on them.
Oh, yeah.
That becomes a controlled grease fire. So the crematories have weight limits on them. So some crematories can only do 500 pounds. Some of them can only do like 700 pounds. Some of them are rated for 1,000. And so you have to make sure that you don't get somebody too large.
In Christian County, if the deceased wasn't under medical supervision, the coroner's office gets involved. A deputy determines whether foul play is suspected. In big cities, autopsies are more common, but in rural Kentucky, limited resources mean they're less frequent. If no autopsy is deemed necessary, the body is released directly to Giles' funeral home. This is where small-town reality collides with human error. Giles recalls one case at a suicide scene where deputies left the firearm behind, a jarring oversight. It's a reminder that death scenes, like life itself, are messy, imperfect, and painfully human.
No, not really. We've got good professionals that they do their job and everything else. Now, one time I did roll up on a suicide, and they had worked it and everything else.
And how'd they do it?
They said
rope or gun. I mean,
no, it was self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. It was everything.
From the bottom or from the side?
I can't remember. But the thing about it was, they had, when they'd gone through and cleared the scene, when I went over there to start my part, I called one of the deputies back in and I said, do y'all want this gun for evidence? Or, because it was still right there.
Oh, wow.
They just left the gun there, and it's like, okay, before I touch anything and contaminate this scene, what's happening here? And they're like, oh, we forgot to move that. Yeah, I believe you did.
If the family chooses embalming, the process begins immediately, no matter the hour. Giles explains why. Death care is unpredictable. You may have nothing to do for a day, and then 4 calls back to back. The work has to be done when the window opens. Embalming is part science, part art, and part illusion. It begins with 2.5 gallons of arterial fluid pumped into the femoral artery. Formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, perfumes, and water conditioners flood the body, forcing 75 to 80% of the blood back out through the veins. Dyes are added for realism. Chromatec pink for a natural flush, or suntan hues for warmer tones. The details are both fascinating and unsettling. Mouths are wired shut with a needle injector. Eye caps, small, rigid discs, are tucked beneath the eyelids to hold them closed. Sometimes glue is added. Cotton is placed to elevate the lips. The goal is to make the face look at peace, even if the final moments of life were anything but.
In it, there's formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, perfuming agents, water conditioning agents, and so. But the bulk of them are formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde, and so that's what. And as a matter of fact, this is a bottle of arterial solution.
Really?
So this has got your formaldehyde in it and your glutaraldehyde in it.
That's that death gravy, huh?
That's right.
Hey,
this
man.
one's called Chromatec Pink.
Ooh.
Made by Dodge Chemical Company.
And who goes pink? Do different people go a different color? That might be for a lady?
Sometimes you mix mix the colors, but most of the time you can use Chromatech pink on a man, on a woman. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I want something a little more gray or something.
Well,
blue.
you know, we've got some suntan dyes and stuff that we can put in there, can kind of make you a little darker, you know,
Really?
something like that. You know, so you've got some dyes that you can put some stuff in there, and then of course the cosmetics that you use can also make it to where if you want, you know, if you want to look like that bronzer look, you know, like you've been laying out, you know, you just came back from Florida or whatever.
Yeah. That one last tan, huh?
That's right, that final tan.
I love that,
We
man.
hook you up.
So you got a couple items here. You got that Chromatech pink, and so that's just that big sip. You put it right into somebody, right? How many bottles of that you throw into somebody?
Well, normally about 2.
That's it?
Because we'll mix this up. We'll mix this with some other fluids that we have, you know, such as a water conditioner, another fluid that's called ProFlow that's kind of like a vein conditioner and an artery conditioner, and we'll mix all that in about 2.5 gallons of total solution. And so it's about 2.5 gallons of solution that we put in the average body.
Okay.
And so what we do is we put that and inject that with an embalming machine through the artery, and at the same time it's pushing the blood and stuff out the vein.
Then comes the trocar, a long metal tube that punctures the abdomen 2 inches above the right of the navel. Giles uses it to aspirate organs, stomach, intestines, even fecal matter, a process not unlike liposuction. The cavity is then filled with a greenish-blue preservative. It's graphic, it's clinical, and yet it's necessary to transform a body into something a grieving family can look upon without fear. For autopsied bodies, the work doubles. Organs removed during the Y incision, brain included, are returned in a biohazard bag. Giles has to pump embalming fluid through multiple injection points, sew the scalp carefully, and do whatever it takes to restore dignity. In cases of jaundice, the wrong chemicals can turn skin a startling shade of green. Here, skill separates a comforting viewing from a haunting memory.
So I don't forget about this. What else do you have to do to the body? You put the cosmetics. What about like the orifices and stuff? How do you make sure that there's no leaking coming out of the body, or there's no, you know, something's not going to come out of someone's nose or eye?
Okay, now that goes back to the embalming process, because the majority of the time, as part of the embalming process, we do a treatment of the organs and the cavities, and that's where we use what's called a trocar.
Okay.
And we use that to puncture and suck out all the contents of the organs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
If cremation is chosen, the process is just as meticulous. The gas-fired chamber roars at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, reducing a body to fragments in about an hour. For obese individuals, the fat can ignite a controlled grease fire, which is why crematories enforce strict weight limits. Pacemakers must be removed beforehand. Their batteries can explode inside the chamber. The remains are pulverized into a fine sand-like texture, cremains, ready to be returned to the family. Others choose burial, a tradition steeped in ritual and symbolism. Casket selections range from the humble $995 death box to a $50,000 mahogany or bronze display of wealth and love. If this were only about fluids, caskets, and crematories, Giles' work would be impressive but mechanical. What sets him apart is his humanity. He tells stories of families tucking shotguns, fishing rods, cigarettes, even stuffed animals into the casket. He laughs about how sneaking a joint into the casket has no TSA to worry about in heaven. But he also grows quiet when speaking of children, suicides, and final notes left behind.
Still grieve with them, but, you know, the thing is, at this time, you know, I have to be their rock. I have to be the person that, you know, you come to me, I'm going to handle it. You know, whatever you need, I'm going to handle it. You put the weight of the world on my shoulders. That's what I'm here for.
Here, the emotional toll becomes clear. Morticians are not detached. They absorb grief, even as they present a calm exterior. I've got to be the rock, Giles says, even when his own heart is breaking. Faith anchors him, the belief that the body is just a shell and the soul has moved on. It allows him to treat each body, whether 1 day old or 99 years lived, with profound respect.
Then fast forward later, I have, it's almost exactly a year later, another friend gets killed in a head-on collision. And then right after that, another friend dies with an enlarged heart that nobody knew he had.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can see that all those things play an influence on you. But you just have to keep on for the family. And, I'll take my time and I'll grieve later, but right now I have to be strong for that family.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm here for.
Has it adjusted your relationship with a higher power, with faith? Have things changed for you over the time, or what's that journey been like in dealing with the deceased?
I've always had a strong faith, but when you look at the human body and you look at everything that goes into it and how every system of the body works and everything else, that was laid out, that just didn't happen. And the fact that, we don't understand everything, but, there's a God that's there that does, and he knows. And we, there's times that we think that we would have had a better way, that we would have had a better plan, that it wouldn't have been good for this person to die. But we don't know. We've just got to wait till we get there, and maybe we'll understand it one day at a time, or, at the end. But, you just got to keep on going. You just got to, have trust and faith and go on.
Does it still feel like a human you're working with? Does it feel like just a carcass? Like what is kind of that feeling, because if I'm carrying a human body that's alive, that's one feeling. But if I'm carrying just a deceased human body, I'm wondering if that's a different feeling.
I think that anytime that there is a deceased versus a live person, there is that difference, yes. But at the same time, that even though the deceased is not there, as far as what made them there, like the spirit, that body still deserves that respect, because that was the shell that either held that body for 1 day or 99 years or 100 years, so it's still all there.
Giles worries about the corporatization of death care. Large funeral chains, in his view, prioritize profit over compassion. He recalls with pride the honor of repatriating a World War II soldier's remains, a process involving DNA testing, airport ceremonies, and entire communities lining highways with flags. It's hard to imagine such reverence being managed by a corporate spreadsheet. Looking forward, he sees innovation, flameless cremation, freezing on the horizon. But no matter how the technology evolves, his philosophy remains rooted in the present. Every day is a gift. Living surrounded by death has stripped away his tolerance for petty frustrations, traffic jams, workplace stress, trivial arguments. None of it matters compared to the reminder that tomorrow is never guaranteed. Sex for survival. When most people hear the phrase sex work, their minds are quickly flooded with stereotypes, assumptions, and often moral judgments. Some imagine shadowy alleys and neon-lit motels. Others conjure images shaped by movies, sensational news headlines, or political campaigns. But in a rare, unflinching conversation, Theo Vaughn sat across from Allison, a sex worker who peeled back the curtain on what her profession is really like: the good, the dangerous, the misunderstood, and the deeply human.
For having me.
Are you nervous?
Slightly, but I think it's gonna be more fun than anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, and if I say, recently they've had, and one of the reasons that why I wanted to have you in, or someone in your line of work, is because recently they had, can you bring it up, Nick, the SESTA, is that right?
SESTA was what was passed through the House, and then FOSTA is the bill that was passed into law and signed by the president.
Okay.
So I do actually have a couple data about that as well. So I don't know if you want to talk about now, or like if you wanted to get into the heavy stuff now or have fun and then get into the heavy stuff, because it's like kind of depressing.
Okay, no. Well, I mean, I guess now I almost feel like a little bit of like a client now. It's like, do I want to have fun and then get into the heavy stuff? Or do I want to get into the heavy stuff and then have fun? Well, how about this? How often?
At first glance, Allison's story fits none of the preconceived notions. She doesn't describe herself as a victim, nor as someone trapped in a seedy underworld. Instead, she speaks of autonomy, discipline, and even empowerment. But as their discussion unfolds, it becomes clear that her career exists within a complicated web of legal structures, cultural stigma, economic necessity, and personal choice. It's a conversation that forces listeners to reconsider where they stand in one of society's most taboo professions.
Well, it's varied over my, career, but I work anywhere between once a week to 3 to 4 times a week.
When you say times, is that a full day or is that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
The most I'll see in one day is, absolute max 3 clients, and I really don't, that's like pushing it for me. So most of the time I just see 1 or 2.
Okay. And when you say see a client, is that you're going over to their place or how does that kind of work?
It depends. Most of the time if I'm going out, it's going to be meeting at a hotel. And then I also have a location that they can come to see me. That's very, obviously it needs to be discreet, and it's way more discreet than a hotel in a lot of cases. So
wow. And that's not like a van or something like that. No, it's not like a but it's not like a storage shed or something.
No,
okay.
It's a nice condo actually.
Okay.
That I share with a colleague.
Okay.
Yes.
And so a visit, right? Like, what are your clientele like? Because when I think of somebody that hires a sex worker, maybe not when I think of it. When people think of it, I imagine they think of some guy and he's got, and his cheeks are all red, kind of like a young Santa, but never got into doing gifts. And he's and he's smoking cigars and he's, lying to his wife and running around. Is that, what is a clientele? What is a sex worker's clientele?
Mine, it's been very surprising actually. And I have to say the longer I've been doing it, the better my clients have been. At the beginning, I still didn't have a lot of savings, so I was kind of just taking what I could get. And at this point, I'm so opposite of that. I'm so picky about who I see and, my interaction with them before I see.
A large part of Allison's story begins with 2 pieces of legislation, SESTA and FOSTA, laws passed in 2018 under the noble-sounding banner of fighting sex trafficking. On the surface, who could oppose such measures? The bill's titles alone, Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act and Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, are designed to be unassailable. After all, who wants to be the politician or celebrity seen as pro-trafficking? But Allison explains that for consensual sex workers, these laws were nothing short of catastrophic. Before their passage, websites like Backpage allowed escorts to advertise, vet clients, and most importantly, stay off the streets. These platforms also hosted internal blacklists where workers could warn one another about dangerous men, abusers, or scammers. With SESTA FOSTA, websites suddenly became liable for any user-generated content that could be interpreted as facilitating trafficking. Fearing lawsuits or prosecution, platforms shut down en masse, deleting ads, forums, and safety tools alike.
Oh, wow.
So if it could be, described as trafficking, then the website is then held accountable for
So
it.
now they have to shut it down because...
Yeah, a lot of websites have like shut down. Backpage, that was a completely, like that all happened kind of like, it was weird that it was around the same time as Sesta Fosta, but it was a different thing. Yeah, so things have shut down.
And it was
Websites
Proposition
are way
260
more,
or something like that?
Yeah.
And a lot of celebrities came out and pushed this and championed it.
Right.
As if to stop sex trafficking, right?
Right.
And, you know, to me, it's always seemed like the sex trafficking numbers in America have seemed way overblown.
They're inflated.
Yeah, it's like you hear like, 200,000 women in America are being sex trafficked and
Right.
stuff. And I'm like, where are there trains running through town? Like, where are these people, you know? Because even, when I would, have experiences with, hiring escorts or something like that or engaging with them at all, I never felt like, oh, this woman is being sex trafficked.
No, I don't know anybody that's being, coerced or
Have you met a lot of women like that? Because there must be something where that belief comes from.
It is there. It's out there. But the ironic thing about this bill is that because they are now, being removed from online, it's pushed it into a dark.
The unintended result? Sex work didn't vanish. It was pushed into darker, riskier corners. Workers who once had the relative safety of vetting clients online were forced back onto the streets, where danger is higher and anonymity rules. As Allison put it, it pushed us into dark, dangerous places. Even groups dedicated to fighting trafficking, like the Freedom Network, opposed the bills. They argued the laws would waste resources and make it harder to locate actual trafficking victims who previously appeared in online postings. For Allison, this was proof that good intentions without nuance can cause enormous harm.
It's hard to be like, oh no, I'm against, the Stop Sex Trafficking Act. Like the way that it was worded is so sneaky, and I really feel like what it actually did was remove a lot of our freedoms as far as using the internet goes.
Agree.
So it's actually a really dangerous bill. There was a lot, like the Freedom Network, which is the largest organization of anti-sex trafficking, or it's the largest network of anti-sex trafficking organizations. They completely opposed this bill.
Wow.
The Department of Justice, the
it's
ACLU.
almost like people just took in, okay, this is what we think about it, so this is what it should be. Let's name it the Stop Sex Trafficking. Of course, everyone wants to stop sex trafficking.
Right.
But this wasn't the way to do it.
And we also don't want consensual sex workers to be lumped in with sex traffic victims, because people like myself are completely like, I'm doing it on my own volition. I enjoy my job. I love my job. Everybody that I know, that, my colleagues that I network with, which I network a lot with a lot of other women, we all really enjoy our job. And a lot of us really truly believe that like we're helping people. And the reason why I feel activated to talk about Sesta Fosta and the people that are disenfranchised by it is because I'm in a position that I'm okay.
Right.
Like I've really not been affected too much by this.
Okay.
I mean, it was scary when it happened in April. Like it was very, like we didn't know, it was really uncertain. Like, we use online blacklists that are, our secret blacklists that girls can log into and find if a client had hurt somebody or raped somebody or assaulted or, dangerous people.
Right.
We use those to keep ourselves safe. We use each other to keep ourselves safe. Like we, can reach out to other
And
girls.
this makes it harder to do that?
This makes it, the blacklist that I use removed, as soon as Sesta Fosta happened, they removed a lot of their postings. So if a girl said, John Smith
dressed up like Paul Bunyan and chased me with an axe,
Yeah.
painted me blue and chased me with an axe.
Like had
you
an
can't
actual
put that on there anymore.
Had an actual description of what happened linked to this person's name and phone number and email. The phone number and email and the name still come up and it's still flagged as a blacklist, but that whole description is completely gone.
Right.
One of the most striking aspects of Allison's testimony is how ordinary, even professional, her day-to-day life sounds. Far from the chaos people imagine, her work is run like a business. In fact, it legally is one. She operates through an LLC, pays taxes, maintains a professional website with carefully curated photography, and screens clients rigorously. Her clientele is surprisingly diverse, from socially awkward young men struggling with intimacy, to professionals seeking companionship without strings, to couples experimenting with their sex lives. She sets boundaries, charges premium rates, and insists on hygiene and safety protocols that rival most medical settings. Contrary to popular belief, STT rates in her community are lower than in the general population, precisely because of this vigilance.
Luckily for me, when I started, I did have a little bit saved up from my sugaring stuff. So I was able to, hire someone to do good photos and it all costs a lot of money to keep the appearances of, a high-end experience.
Okay, so you have a website, you have all that sort of stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, so it's like a business.
It's totally a business. In fact, I have an LLC, I pay taxes, I have an accountant, I run my business completely on my own. I've considered getting an assistant, but I just am too type A. Like, I need everything in my own control the whole time, even though it's so much extra work. But
I feel you.
And especially 90% of my job is weeding through emails and
really
just
like Nick,
just total bullshit.
What are one of the wildest things that somebody's, is a John or somebody has hired you to get involved in? Because I picture doing jousting. You ever get out there and they got animals in there? You know what I'm saying? They got raccoons out there, something like that. I feel like
I got an email just the other day of a guy.
Hide a snake in you or something. Do that reptile magic or something.
I don't think I couldn't. I've had
Where's
someone.
my snake?
I had someone had mentioned animals, and that just completely disturbed me. So I was like, "Fuck that." I had someone email me, and I'm not going to return this email, but they stated my weight and my height, and then a girlfriend, a colleague that I work with, because I have a couple girls that I do doubles with. So, and they are listed on my website, and I'm listed on their website, and it's well known that we work together. But he was like, I know that you're this height and this weight, and your friend is this height and this weight. Would you be able to hold her for long periods of time and throw her around? And I was like, well, it was funny because I'm not a power lifter, so that I was just imagining me struggling naked, trying to throw my girlfriend around a hotel, and it just seemed like the weirdest. I don't know. So most of my work is completely just normal and vanilla. I don't really. I've had a couple experiences that were really just out of the norm. I can
I'd love to hear about one of those.
About a year and a half ago, I had there was a double with a girlfriend of mine, and it was a guy that I don't think I'd seen before. And he comes in and
now, do you put on body polish or something like that when you go over there for the stuff? Do you put on moisturizer and all of that?
I take very good care of my body.
Yeah. Your skin looks nice.
Thank you. I am in tip-top shape all the time.
What Allison underscores repeatedly is the difference between consent and coercion. She chooses her clients, negotiates her terms, and walks away when requests cross her limits. This is miles away from trafficking, yet the two are constantly conflated in public discourse. Perhaps the most insidious challenge Allison faces isn't the work itself, but the stigma surrounding it. Words like hooker, prostitute, and whore still dominate cultural vocabulary, dehumanizing the individuals behind the label. Allison prefers the term sex worker because it emphasizes labor, a transaction of time, skill, and service, rather than moral condemnation.
Terms?
Oh, yes. We say sex worker because it humanizes us, because we are workers. We're legitimate workers. I really don't like, obviously prostitute is a legal term. Hooker, whore, hoe, whatever. Those words dehumanize us. People are just oh, that, she doesn't matter. She's a hooker. She's not a real person. I want to I want people to humanize us. We're normal people. Everyone I know is like every girl that I know that does this is educated, well-traveled, emotionally healthy, wonderful, beautiful people, artists, like happy people. Like we enjoy what we do. Like just let us work and let us work and like be safe.
What if people were like, "Oh, she got that party kitty"? Is that an okay term?
Yeah. That's an okay term. Party kitty? Sure.
I'm just trying to think of something that, that's still, obtuse, but it's also kind of fun,
Yeah. I think escort, companion, those are all acceptable terms. Like derogatory terms like hooker, hoe, all of that is, it just, it's equivalent to, derogatory terms about trans people or people of color. Like it's.
She got that secret slick. Mm-hmm. That's what some people could say.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm
The stigma doesn't just sting socially, it has tangible consequences. Workers are less likely to go to the police when assaulted, less likely to receive legal protection, and more likely to be dismissed by healthcare providers or courts. Families, too, often maintain a don't ask, don't tell silence, as in Allison's case, where her parents are aware but avoid conversation. Theo himself admitted that much of his early contact with escorts was fueled by loneliness, shame, and avoidance of deeper relationships. His candor underscores how much of society's engagement with sex work is wrapped in secrecy, guilt, or projection, dynamics that both hurt clients and workers.
Human. I'm not a robot, so yeah, I guess that's like my best answer for that. But I really appreciate these questions, though.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the answers. I mean, I think it's interesting.
Our booker, Gianni, we have a closed circuit live feed. He asked if your parents knew.
Yes. I've been open somewhat with my family about it. And it's kind of, I'm not the closest with my family, so it's almost like a don't ask, don't tell thing. But, they know.
Do you think if you had a closer relationship with your family that you would have even gotten into something like this, or you think this is...
That's a good question.
I guess it's hard to know.
It is hard to know, but I don't know. I've kind of always I've always loved sex, and I've always loved.
Well, you control it then.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes with comedy, it's like I know if I'm making people laugh, like when people are laughing, it's almost like they're impaired for a minute, or for a second.
Uh-huh.
They're shaking, they're making a sound. I mean, it's the closest thing you can get to really shooting somebody. Kind of, or electrocuting them.
Right.
It's like, mm-hmm. So I know that when it's almost like putting a little bitty spell on them,
mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I just felt probably inside of me, I felt so uncomfortable that was the only moment I could feel comfortable was if somebody else was, I knew if they were like that, then they couldn't do anything to me. There was nothing they had no control in that moment.
Right.
Because it's involuntary for them to laugh.
Right.
So they had no control.
Right.
It was completely out of their control because they were doing something involuntary.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a moment where, not like I had to be so controlling, but just I knew then in that moment that they weren't going to be able to do something to make me feel bad
mm-hmm.
or make me feel scared or harmed,
I relate to that.
Yeah, I just wonder sometimes, or not wonder sometimes, but I wonder right now if that's... Yeah, it's like you can control the situation.
Mm-hmm. It's all a very controlled environment.
Listening to Allison describe her career reveals a series of paradoxes. On one hand, she finds her work empowering, calling it a life hack that allowed her to pay off debt, support herself through school, and gain financial independence. She views her ability to separate sex from emotion as a unique strength, one that allows her to leave her work behind without psychological baggage. On the other hand, she's constantly negotiating risk, physical, legal, and emotional. Online blacklists that once helped protect her now operate with neutered warnings, replacing dangerous with time waster to avoid liability. Social media is filled with posts from sex workers who've gone missing, been beaten, or taken their own lives since Sesta Fosta. Even routine encounters carry the chance of clients overstepping boundaries, fueled by drugs, entitlement, or fantasy. There's also the tension between intimacy and detachment. Some clients develop feelings for her, She acknowledges moments of genuine chemistry, but never blurs professional lines. She has been in love, but always outside of work. Her compartmentalization is her armor, but it's also what makes her unusual. Not everyone could separate in the same way.
Or who they are, but I don't have like that super. I think a lot of women just they carry a lot of like emotional attachment to sex. I think that's why it's difficult for women to kind of, be slutty, because they're like, well, what is this? Like, we had sex, so does that mean, you're going to be my boyfriend? Or I don't know. So I've never really had that. I think that's a really wild idea to even think that. So I'm just, I guess I'm in the minority there. But I do have like rituals in order to like kind of like, cut the energy cord from, after I see a client, I'm like, okay, cut the energy cord, send it back with love and light. Like I do, absorb emotional energy. So I, do what I can to, cleanse myself of that and keep myself healthy and keep my emotions in check. Some days are better than others. Sometimes it's like, man, sometimes it doesn't feel that great. It's not always, perfect, but
yeah,
I'm a human. I'm not a robot.
Of course, the conversation wasn't about levity. Allison recounted some of the strangest and most extreme encounters of her career, pegging a client until her hips ached, navigating the awkwardness of college virgins, turning down bizarre wrestling requests, and facing down a man with a bag of baseball-sized metal balls and baby lotion. Some stories were hilarious, others unsettling, but together they painted a vivid picture of the unpredictability of her profession.
I think he either wanted double penetration for my friend, because I don't do butt stuff, but my friend does butt stuff, and we have strap-on. Her and I went and bought a strap-on together.
Okay.
And it turned out that he wanted to be pegged while he was fucking her, and I was like, okay, I'll do the pegging. And
that pokemotive they call that, boy. You know what I'm saying?
We used this like
this is
like
US
kind of
jousting
rampy
team.
pillow thing to so she was laying on her back and then he was on her, and then I think
so he was doing like kind of a missionary style but buttocks work.
Yeah, and then I was completely in the
behind
back.
him.
In the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the back, man. You're that Horace Grant. You picking
up the
rebounds.
This had been, there was like all kinds of fooling around and stuff before this happened. And I remember like the time was starting to run up and this guy was not coming. And I was like, okay, we need to like wrap this up. And and another thing, the guy took his shirt off and he had a belly button ring. And I was like, it was
That's like Joe Exotic. I don't know if you guys know him or not. He's a famous cat tamer / murderer from
the belly button ring really threw me off. I was like, you were cute until I saw the belly button ring, and I was like, oh god. And then I just remember
had a drunk guy in our town who used to keep a spare house key on it all the time because he always would lose his keys.
Joe Exotic, got it.
What stood out, however, wasn't the strangeness of the request, but Allison's unflinching control. She set her boundaries firmly. No butt stuff, no activities that repulse her, no off-the-clock meetups, no manipulative sugar arrangements. Her ability to say no, even in a profession where clients often expect anything goes, is part of why she feels empowered rather than exploited. Beyond Allison's personal journey lies a broader societal debate. How should we handle sex work as a culture and a legal system? Allison advocates decriminalization, not legalization with heavy state control, which often benefits corporations and excludes marginalized workers, but full decriminalization that removes penalties for consensual adult activity.
It's gotten like out of control. So I don't know like where are the victims that were helped by this? Like, please show me.
Yeah, it's another thing. Like, and I remember I would go to like, because I've been asked to perform at like different sex trafficking events over the years and stuff. And a lot of the times the videos and stuff, the things that I would see at some of these places, I'm just like, where is this going? Like, they'd show all these videos of women from a lot of other countries, and I definitely think it's happening more in other countries,
right?
For sure. But it's like, I've never been around an environment. I've never, even in, having experiences with escorts, that I've never been like, oh, these are these women seem sex trafficked. But now what about a woman that has a pimp? Like, that seems like an uncomfortable situation sometimes.
Pimps take advantage of vulnerable women.
Right.
And if we had a way, if it was decriminalized, if we had a way to protect ourselves, if we did have a bad John, by going to the police and not being punished for prostitution,
right,
I feel like it would completely cut out the middleman. Like, a pimp would not be necessary.
She argues that this would reduce exploitation by eliminating pimps, empower workers to report abuse, and allow police to focus on actual trafficking cases. Countries like New Zealand, where decriminalization has been implemented, provide evidence that this model can improve safety and public health outcomes. Her perspective also challenges economic assumptions. Many people dismiss sex workers with the lazy advice to get another job, ignoring the structural barriers many face. Surveys reveal that most are supporting families, often as sole providers, with dependents ranging from children to elderly relatives. For marginalized groups, women of color, trans individuals, immigrants, sex work may not be a glamorous choice, but it can be the most viable option for survival and stability.
Platforms.
I agree. When I would be on those sites, because my thing is, dude, I would get, when I was doing drugs out there, I would be doing drugs, and I'd start, what'd you say, Nick?
You mentioned the celebrities that were against the sex trafficking.
Okay.
I hate them all.
Ashton Kutcher's your mortal enemy.
Yeah, I know it was like Amy Schumer, Ashton Kutcher. Are these people, Ricky Martin? Who else? Ashton Kutcher, Demi Moore, Carrie Underwood, Kristen Bell.
It's just, it's a misguided, like, I understand, like, it's hard, especially for anyone,
It feels misguided.
Any lawmakers that are having to vote for this, it feels weird. There's only two.
Theo Vaughn also approached the conversation with honesty about his own experiences. He admitted to wasting escorts' time in the past, driven by loneliness and drug abuse, too afraid to actually meet but craving attention and fantasy. He also acknowledged his ongoing struggles with commitment and intimacy, confessing that pornography and casual flirting often distract him from genuine relationships. In Allison, he saw a mirror of sorts. Just as he uses comedy to control an audience's involuntary response, laughter, she uses her work to control the dynamics of desire and intimacy. Both, in their own ways, are about channeling human vulnerability into structured transactional encounters.
No, I mean, I have issues with my own, desires to act out in ways of watching pornography and ways of reaching out to, or considering sex work as opposed to considering reaching out to sex workers as opposed to as ways to steer away from trying to be brave enough to stay in a committed relationship and that sort of thing, like the temptations of those and but I don't disrespect.
At its heart, this dialogue wasn't just about sex. It was about humanizing the people behind the labels, stripping away the layers of stigma, politics, and moral panic to reveal individuals making choices within complicated systems. Allison's story forces listeners to reconsider their assumptions. Is sex work inherently degrading, or can it be empowering? Are anti-trafficking laws always helpful, or can they harm those they claim to protect? And perhaps most importantly, what does society lose when it refuses to see sex workers as full, autonomous human beings?
Because a lot of people don't understand that it's just work. Like, I have a completely separate, I compartmentalize my work, and it's just completely different for me. So
did something happen? Was there? You feel like there was a thing in your life that happened that made it that way for you with sex? Because people always feel like if someone's a sex worker that they were molested or they were endangered or they had a bad sexual experience.
I've never been molested. I've never had a bad sexual experience. I don't know. I just really enjoy sex, and I've decided to put value to it, and it's. I feel like my self-worth and my self-respect has only increased since I started.
Allison's voice complicates the narrative, as all authentic voices do. She is neither victim nor villain. but a woman navigating a profession shaped by laws, stigma, economics, and human desire. Her story reveals both the perils and possibilities of sex work, reminding us that behind every headline or stereotype is a person with agency, boundaries, dreams, and stories worth hearing. And perhaps that's the most radical part of all, to listen without judgment, to recognize legitimacy where society has long denied it, and to understand that the world of sex work, like any other form of labor, is as much about survival, resilience, and humanity as it is about sex. The science of life and death. The next conversation between Theo Vaughn and Neil deGrasse Tyson is a masterclass in weaving together science, philosophy, humor, and humanity. What makes it stand out isn't just Tyson's dazzling knowledge, but the way he frames science as a lens to re-examine life itself. It's not about equations on a chalkboard. It's about how the universe shapes the way we love, the way we fear, and the way we organize society.
Civilization, I'm trying to illuminate places where people could think differently, or maybe not have to think that way at all, because in fact, what they felt was deeply held argument really just evaporates in the face of a cosmic perspective. So here's one. You're a vegetarian because you just don't want to kill animals, okay? You don't want to kill, fine. So in your basement, you have a humane mousetrap. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
You've seen those?
Yeah, some of them, it's like a little. It goes in there.
Goes in.
And there's art on the walls inside of it.
I've seen.
It's like
it's like a mouse condominium. All right.
Yeah,
so they go in. You got to check them every few days.
Water.
Every few days because they'll dry out. All right. So anyhow, so you check it, and then and what do they do with the mouse once they capture it?
Let it free.
They let it free into the wild. All right, because they don't want to kill animals. All right, I get that. But do you realize that a mouse in the wild lives between 9 and 18 months because it's highly likely to be swallowed whole by an owl or pecked apart by all manner of woodland predators, okay, carnivores. And so what you've done is you've doomed the mouse to be eaten prematurely in its...
At the heart of Tyson's approach is his relentless push for rational, evidence-based thinking. He's not saying everyone has to become a scientist. Instead, he's asking us to stop sleepwalking through our opinions. Why do we save dolphins but eat tuna without a second thought? Why do we swear a roulette wheel is due when probabilities don't work that way? Why do we cling to eyewitness testimony while ignoring statistical truths? Each question isn't just a science lesson. It's a mirror reflecting our biases, blind spots, and the limits of intuition. And that's why the anecdotes he offers land so hard. When he talks about epileptic seizures, once being mistaken for demonic possession, or women with cats branded as witches because they survived plagues, you can't help but feel a chill. It reminds us how quickly ignorance turns into persecution when there's no science to counter superstition. Tyson's cosmic perspective insists that we look deeper, past fear, tradition, past politics, toward objective truths that don't bend just because we don't like them.
With all the time.
Exactly. And so you try to sift through what is true, and it must be that which was repeated often enough. So that's a political truth. Then there's an objective truth.
Okay, what does objective mean?
And the methods and tools of science are exquisitely tuned to establish objective truths. So these are truths that have been demonstrated by observation and experiment and repeated experiment.
What does the word objective mean?
Objective means it's true whether or not you believe in it.
Okay, so it's no doubt true.
Yeah, because I can show that it's true, and it's not my bias that thinks it's true. Here's the data. Now you say, I don't believe you. I think you had a bias. I think your wall current affected this, so I'm going to do it on 240 volts while you did yours on 125 volts, 120 volts. You do a different experiment of your own design, you get the same result.
So that's objective. It's a fact.
So when you do it enough times, and all the experiments agree, this is why science, it wasn't really developed as we now practice it until around.
But Tyson doesn't float off into abstraction. He grounds the cosmic in the deeply personal. His volume of love idea, calculating relationships as multidimensional equation, sounds geeky at first, But when he ties it to reconciling with his wife, it becomes profoundly human. It's science, not as cold analysis, but as a framework for gratitude, for understanding that love, like the cosmos, is vast, complicated, and worth measuring in more than just one dimension. Perhaps one of the most striking parts of the discussion is Tyson's plea to hold onto childhood curiosity. He points out how society systematically squeezes wonder out of kids, turning discovery into drudgery, and yet the best scientists are those who never gave up on being curious kids. Tyson's own examples, such as calculating the weight of Thor's hammer or noticing how fragile eggs really are, remind us that awe and playfulness are not distractions from learning, but rather the very fuel that keeps it alive.
Objects. I watched the Thor movie, and I'm saying, gee, I want to know how much does that hammer weigh? I'm still curious.
Oh,
okay,
interesting.
what does that hammer weigh? And I heard a sentence in the movie that enabled me to calculate how much his hammer weighed.
Wow.
They say, hammer forged in the heart of a dying star? Oh my gosh, I'm an astrophysicist. We deal in dying stars. I got this. Hide some dense stuff going on in a dying star.
Damn.
I filled out the density, and I tweeted it, and I said, if Thor's hammer is made in the way the movie says, it has the weight of a herd of 300 million elephants.
Oh.
That's why nobody could pick it up. The Hulk couldn't pick it up.
Then there's his cosmic pragmatism. On immorality, for instance, Tyson flips the script. Why chase eternal life when mortality is what gives urgency to our days? Death, in his view, isn't the enemy of meaning. It's the engine of it. Without an end date, would we care as much, create as much, love as fiercely? This perspective turns what many fear most into something almost empowering.
Okay.
For me, there's nothing more motivating than the knowledge I'm going to die. Think of the prisoner in the cell, and they're putting an X through every one because every X is one day closer to getting out. Well, let's do that for your life. Every X you spend doing nothing, that's a day you could have done something and you're going to die one day.
Yeah.
And it's there on the calendar, okay? This would so motivate me, as it does, to be as productive as I can, as helpful as I can. Try to make a better world for your privilege of having lived in it. So if knowing you're going to die brings meaning to your life, then living forever is a life of no meaning at all.
Damn.
That's how I think about it.
The conversation takes on a more global and futuristic weight when Tyson talks about gravitational wave detection, alien contact, and China's massive, fast telescope. He makes it clear that science doesn't just answer today's questions, but also equips us for tomorrow's unimaginable realities. Whether it's a firmware upgrade in human consciousness after first contact, or the quiet but revolutionary application of Einstein's equations in technologies we now take for granted, Tyson shows how science expands not only what we know, but what we are capable of becoming.
Right thing to do. This is the firmware upgrade. They're not thinking space.
Right.
They're just thinking, obvious, we should. No, you know what else was going on in 1970? We were at war, hot war, cold war, campus unrest, civil rights movement. In 1968, 2 leaders were assassinated. 1971, was the shootings on Kent State campus. We had issues here on Earth. Don't tell me, it felt like the right time to protect Earth. We had other issues. Something else was operating in your brainstem that you weren't even aware of. That's the firmware upgrade. Do you remember? You would have seen videos of it. The crying Indian.
Yeah.
Okay. People throw trash out the window, and he turns around and he tears, and he's in headdress. Of course, that dude was Italian. He was an Italian actor. Yeah, he was Italian heritage. So back then you could do that, right? Right. You could do that back then. But my point is, when did that public service announcement come? 1970. People throwing trash out their window for decades.
So something at that point made us think we got to start looking at this place that we're on.
You know what that's called? A cosmic perspective.
Yet the brilliance of Tyson's perspective is in how it refuses to stop at the stars. He pulls the conversation back to Earth, pointing out the disconnect between perception and reality in our daily lives. Crime is statistically lower than in decades past, yet people feel more unsafe than ever, thanks to sensationalist media feeding on fear. Gender, he argues, isn't a binary, but a spectrum, and clinging to rigid categories only perpetuates harm. Identity, love, morality, and even politics, all of it, he suggests, benefits from the same humility and openness we bring to studying the cosmos.
Now, what about this? Do you think we are due for other firmware upgrades?
I would like to think so. A firmware upgrade where we stop killing each other.
Yeah.
You think, there's no greater argument someone gives for killing someone else than what they believe in rather than what is actually true. It's almost like the less evidence you have for something, the more you're willing to give your own life or to take someone else's life for it. And that's some weird stuff for our species, weird behavior pattern for. Now, the world is a much safer place than ever before. Here's a number to sleep on. You ready?
Yeah, probably.
We live in a time where if a bus drives into a crowd of protesters, kills 10 people, that's world headlines for a day. It's national headlines for a week. It's local headlines for a month. Okay? Kills 10 people. Between 1939 and 1945, 1,000 humans were killed per hour of every hour between 1939 and 1945. That doesn't happen today. Yes, we have war, we have conflict, people are dying.
It's not like that.
Not like that. It is not like that. And not long before that, there was another world war, plus a pandemic on top of it that ultimately killed more people than the World War did.
Wow. So less people are dying.
Yes.
Theo Vaughn's role in all of this shouldn't be overlooked either. His ability to ask offbeat, often vulnerable questions keeps the discussion from turning into a lecture. It feels more like an exploration, a collision of worlds where street-level honesty meets cosmic perspective. That's the part what makes the conversation so compelling. It's not just about science, it's about how science touches life in messy, human ways. By the end, Tyson leaves us with a challenge. Life itself is a statistical miracle. The odds of any one of us existing are astronomically low. To waste that gift on ignorance, pettiness, or fear is, in his view, a tragedy. Instead, we're called to curiosity, to rational thought, and to action. Whether that's in the form of advancing knowledge, creating something meaningful, or simply contributing to a kinder society, the point is to score a victory for humanity before our time runs out.
So in the end of this chapter, and what I do as an epitaph, there's a quote from an educator, Horace Mann. You might have heard the name. He was 200 years ago, brilliant guy, head of universities. He gave a commencement speech. And he said, "I beseech you," love that word. Nobody uses it anymore.
Yeah, you feel
girls
it. Hang up immediately.
Oh, is that right? I haven't tested it. I don't know. I'll try to bring it back and maybe they'll stay on with you. I beseech you. Yeah, if you say, "I beseech you to go on a date with me," right, that's the end of that call right there. You're done. I beseech you to treasure up in your hearts these my parting words. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. And if you got one time on Earth.
That's what makes this conversation so powerful. It doesn't just inform, it reframes. It forces us to reconsider how we love, how we argue, how we believe, and how we live. Under the weight of Tyson's cosmic lens, everything feels at once smaller and infinitely more meaningful. The roulette wheel, the tuna sandwich, the way we vote, the way we treat strangers, it all fits into the same story. A story not just about stars and galaxies, but about what it means to be a human in a universe that neither bends to our feelings nor waits for us to catch up.
And it kept changing.
Now look at how our brain works. We have hurricane strengths, right?
Oh, yeah.
They measure the wind speed. Do you realize it's a continuum? But we We divided it into 5 categories.
Right.
But it's a continuum. Do you realize you can go from low category 3 to high category 3, and they'll just talk about Hurricane Irma is still a category 3. 1 mile an hour faster, and it's category 4. It's breaking news.
Oh, yeah.
Hurricane Irma is now category 4.
Yeah.
Excuse me, it's 1 mile an hour faster than it was yesterday.
Yeah, people lied. They said the winds broke in.
Okay, so I
saw the winds making a bowl of cereal, some guy said. Like, what?
That's funny. That's so my point is, even with hurricane strengths, we force them into categories when it's actually a continuum.
It's the kind of conversation that lingers, half philosophy, half science, fully human. And whether you walk away questioning your moral frameworks, your relationship to death, or just wondering how heavy Thor's hammer really is, you can't help but feel the pull of Tyson's bigger point. Stay curious, stay humble, and never stop learning. Because the universe is vast, but our time in it is fleeting, and it's up to us to make that count. Dirty Jobs. This Theo Von micro conversation hits a rare sweet spot between hilarious storytelling, sobering social critique, and a kind of unfiltered honesty that feels both entertaining and important.
Isn't it crazy the games we play and the little things we do, at least I do, over the course of a day, right? It could be making the light at the intersection. It could be, the perfect text, the right tweet, whatever you assign value to. But yeah, it's funny. I hadn't thought about it that way. But at that point in my life, one of the most satisfying things to do was to catch a turd in midair.
Yeah. God.
Simple things.
Oh, I think in some countries it's probably a dang Olympic sport, I think.
It ought to be.
If you get out there into some places, Oh, yeah. I think who knows where things will go. I think that entertainment's getting pretty out there.
You think? I mean, geez, you know what I did the other night, man? I'm flicking around, not knowing what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I stumble across the National Cornhole Championship.
Yeah.
Grown men.
Them bag boys, yeah.
I mean, I think 7 or 8 straight in the hole. No sliding, no nothing. Just nailed it.
I feel like when I watch that, I can feel their wives in the distance being like, get a fucking job right now, Darren.
So proud of you, Darren. So proud of you with your little bean bag and your little hole.
We're proud of you, but Tiffany needs her daddy at home. You know what I'm saying? You could, because I don't think the money's there yet.
But it's the same. It's like as a kid, I remember flicking around and watching bowling.
Yeah.
Like Earl Anthony Jr. bowling. And it was the most the intensity and the focus.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big crowd, but it was an engaged crowd. And the way the announcer would step in there and, oh my God, the pressure is high and here he is and the focus and the concentration. It's the same thing with...
Micro, as always, blends humor with hard truths. His childhood stories, like catching horse turds midair for bonus points, are funny in the moment, but they're also a setup for his larger point. Work, even the messy kind, shapes who we are. His grandfather's influence as a self-taught tradesman grounds that idea even more. That sense of respect for real hands-on skill radiates through everything Micro says, and it explains why Dirty Jobs resonated beyond just a TV show. It was a cultural correction to the growing disconnect between knowledge workers and the trades that actually keep the world running.
I think the reason the show lasted as long as it lasted was because we never did a second take. I just said, look, if I'm going to do a reality show, this is back before reality meant something unreal.
Yeah, that's how it's gotten.
Like if we're literally, you came up in that world too.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, we're not going to do any pre-production. We're not going to do any writing. We're not going to do any real casting. All we're going to do is follow a guy around doing his job. And I'm going to have a normal crew, and they're going to shoot the show, and they're going to cut the show, however we agree to do it. But I'm also going to have a camera that never stops rolling. And I called it
the semen collection stories, the ostrich with a loaf of bread penis, the electrified bulls. These are classic Roe anecdotes, bizarre and gross in equal measure. But they're not just for shock value. Each one underscores how much of modern life rests on invisible, uncomfortable, but vital labor. He takes the viewer or listener into those hidden spaces of civilization, spaces that most people would never imagine, and shows how essential they are. The humor makes it palatable. The underlying respect makes it resonate.
A note, Spunk Minion. If that doesn't wind up on a hat, if you're not selling Spunk Minion hats by this time next month, I got to talk to your ad guys because you've missed a real opportunity. Next on Spunk Minions. And so you're hunched under this animal, and this is not like a bull's little carrot penis. This is a full-on baby's arm holding an apple.
You have to rest on your shoulder or anything? Like, how heavy is it?
Yeah, well, you get your shoulder underneath the animal, then you grab the penis, and you slip it into the artificial vagina, which looks like a hot water bottle.
Oh, yeah.
And now here's the craziest part about it, man. On the other side of the artificial vagina, you've got a baby bottle, like a formula baby bottle that screws in. And inside that baby's bottle is a plastic bag. So all the sperm from the artificial vagina drains into the baby bottle and into the bag inside. It's like $35,000 worth of spoogeloti, right? Like in your hand, like stat. And the strangest thing, and my favorite artifact from Dirty Jobs that I actually auctioned off a few years ago from my foundation was that baby bottle, 14 years old, filled with the sperm from this horse called Paid by Chick, and I used to keep it. I used to keep it on my mantle.
Oh, yeah.
In San Francisco, where I lived in my apartment. In the afternoon sun, Theo, it would come through the window, and it would pick up that crystallized semen in that baby bottle and throw the most beautiful little rainbows across the living room.
Unreal.
Little sperm prison.
Theo Von adds a perfect counterbalance with his own tales of surreal gigs. Stand-up at Guantanamo Bay. MTV stunts mixing Jackass with Fear Factor. His lens is more absurdist, but it mirrors Rose. Both men have lived in spaces where danger, discomfort, and comedy overlap. That's what makes their conversation click. They understand that pushing into uncomfortable zones reveals truths you can't find anywhere else. Rose pivots into bigger picture commentary is where the conversation takes on real weight. His foundation, Micro Works, is not just a philanthropic project. It's a cultural statement. Statistics that force you to stop and rethink the story we tell about opportunity in America. He's not railing against work itself, but against the systemic nonsense that discourages people from doing it.
Point of the story is, nothing changes. I'm as high as I was a second earlier. I'm not doing anything different. I'm simply aware that suddenly the safety net is gone.
Right.
There's nothing there. So the stakes are higher, that's all. And that's the moment, Theo, when the sound of your sphincter echoes in your mind, right? Nothing changes, but holy crap. You took your eye off the ball, and the cameras can't save you. The helicopter can't save you. You're just an idiot.
Yeah.
Dangling 600 feet in the air, right? And so, yeah, it was moments like that during the show that reminded me, don't be an idiot. The cameras actually can't save you, and people get hurt bad. People die every day doing this kind of work.
People die every day. I think that's why God made so many people, because we need repeated examples that people aren't going to.
The part about screens and social media hits especially hard. Rowe calling it the death of grout is poetic. It captures the erosion of the connective tissue between people, between skills, between communities. A welder builds something tangible. A TikTok binge builds nothing, yet consumes the same amount of time as a career. Rowe's self-awareness, even admitting he loses circulation in his legs scrolling, makes the critique land without sounding preachy. It's a human problem, not just a generational one.
Just a couple weeks ago, an economist named Nicholas Eberhardt.
Okay.
This guy is brilliant. Harvard, all the abbreviations after his name that you want, American Enterprise Institute, wrote a best-selling book in 2016 called Men Without Work, just republished it because the contention in the book is now on steroids.
Wow.
And basically what he's saying is, never mind the unemployment numbers. They don't matter. That's a Depression-era metric, and it doesn't tell us anything we really, really need to know. Here's what we need to know. 7 million able-bodied men between the ages of 25 and 54 are not only not working, they are not looking. They're affirmatively not looking for work. Never in peacetime, never has that metric existed before. We have 4 million more open jobs today than we did pre-pandemic, and we have 4 million fewer people in the workforce. It's really bad, and you can't find an employer in anywhere today who is not desperate to hire. So, like that.
When he expands into globalization and manufacturing, the argument widens. Cheap goods aren't free. They come at the cost of local production, security, and meaning. His skepticism about America's dependency on foreign supply chains isn't just economic, it's cultural. If you don't make what you use, you lose the spirit that comes from creating something for people you know. That insight threads back to the central theme of work as identity, as connection, as dignity.
How did globalization really ruin us? Because a lot of times I think like, Mike, I think like my mom grew up in Wyoming, Illinois, right? It's a small town.
Yeah.
And there are some, they used to have, I think, FMC. They made like elevator parts and stuff like that, or like the gangplanks that go from the plane to the terminal.
Yeah.
And my grandfather worked over there. And Purina was like in like some of the nearby towns in Iowa, and had like offsets in Illinois. And it was interesting because it was like, as a kid, your dad worked at the factory, and so you had a piece of pride in whatever. Oh, well, this dog food, they make that at the factory, or this table, oh, they make that at the factory. And so there was a sense of like what you were using, there was just a connectivity, a fabric of it all.
It was local.
Yeah.
It's the grout we were talking about. The grout is it holds communities together. It holds zip codes together. It holds towns together, states together, and it holds the country together. Will it hold the world together? Well, I don't know. I'm suspicious of it because, there's some very, very big differences between this country and Russia and China and Iran and the UK and France, for that matter. We're not fundamentally different as a species, but we're fundamentally different as a society.
Yeah.
And so, when you say, has globalization wrecked the country, my slip is showing here a little bit, but I'll tell you, I look at it like, if you had a gifted and talented kid, really smart, right? How would you feel about putting him in a public school? You'd worry, right? You'd look at him or her and you'd be like, I don't think that this is the best environment to nurture the qualities my.
The sports commentary at the end ties it all together nicely. Rowe's disillusionment with professional sport after the Colts left Baltimore mirrors his broader critique of modern institutions. Once the corporate machine takes over, authenticity evaporates. That's why he gravitates towards amateur competitions, like cornhole or darts. They still carry the raw, fresh off the spigot authenticity that dirty jobs celebrated. The blind side of life. In one of those rare exchanges that feels both deeply human and eye-opening, Theo Von and Tanya Milojevic explore the blind side of living. What makes it so gripping isn't just Tanya's remarkable story. It's the way she reframes blindness, not as a limitation, but as an alternate way of experiencing the world that's rich with sound, touch, imagination, and resilience.
So I was born sighted. It was just that I was premature 2 months and had to sit in the incubator for a couple months. And then the oxygen extra oxygen, detached my retinas. So I had to have some surgeries to reattach. And I was very lucky to be able to come to the U.S. from Serbia, where I was from, and have those reattached somewhat.
Here in the U.S.?
Here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Dr. Rosie.
Like, how blind are you, though? Like, if I had to guess, like do you feel pretty blind?
Oh, total. I mean, I have enough vision to get me into trouble, but it's about 22,000 in one eye and 2,700 in the other. So every time I have a laser surgery, because I developed glaucoma due to the scar tissue after my surgeries initially, the laser surgeries that I do or did every couple of years, haven't done one in a while, thankfully, those reduce my acuity each time, and there is a risk that I can go totally blind in both of my eyes or one of them.
Her early story alone, being born premature, losing much of her vision to retinopathy, and enduring countless surgeries, sets the stage for what feels like a life shaped by adversity, but not defined by it. What stands out most is the way she describes her perception. While sighted people often become sense lazy, leaning almost entirely on vision, she's trained her hearing, touch, and even memory into tools that not only guide her, but allow her to create a kind of mental map of the world. When she says she feels like Inspector Gadget or a detective, it's not metaphorical. It's how she literally navigates spaces that most of us take for granted. That detail alone flips the listener's perspective. The world becomes layered in sound, smell, and spatial memory rather than just images.
I don't know. I mean, if I were Daredevil and had a weapon in my cane, that'd be awesome. But no, I wouldn't say it's that good. But it does certainly help in picking up cues and what's going on in the environment around me. So especially for navigation, I use my sense of hearing. Let's say there's a waterfall that I know I'll have to pass or keep behind me as I'm traveling forward. And then there's an ice cream parlor and they play particular music. And there are smells associated. All of that not only triggers memory to help you sort of map it out in your head, but it gives you a constant that you can rely on as you're traveling. Or even when you're watching films without audio description.
Do you feel like a detective a little bit then? Like when every day when you wake up, do you feel like almost like Inspector Gadget a little? Because you got to kind of like
that would be cool,
figure
actually.
it out.
Hey, maybe that'll make my mornings a little easier, especially when the week drags on and I just want the weekend to be there so I can enjoy and record and have fun.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Hey, I'll try that. That's a good suggestion.
But do you feel like I'm just trying to think of what it's like to not to not have sight, to be blind, to be sight impaired. Like I'm trying to think of like if my brain would wake up every day and the world would seem like more
vibrant.
Yeah, is that what it seems like?
It can, certainly, especially if you're looking forward to the day and you're in a great mood. It can definitely seem filled with a lot of different things. It can get a little overwhelming sometimes. With
not having sight, you mean?
Yeah, if you're in a loud environment, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Like being at a bar or a club, even at a convention or
at like a Chelsea Handler.
Yeah,
listening
concert.
To her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I found her commentary on music fascinating too. The idea that certain frequencies, like the shrillness of German industrial metal or Nicki Minaj's higher notes, can actually feel painful, highlights how different her sensory calibration really is. For someone like Tanya, sound isn't just entertainment, it's environment. That's why she's drawn to horror. Her love of horror films, books, and audio dramas comes from the way sound can generate adrenaline and immersion. When she describes horror as her personal X Games, it's such a striking analogy. For her, crossing a busy street without perfect sight is already a fight-or-flight experience. Horror just mirrors that reality in a safe, controlled way.
Actually, I'm very imaginative. I'm a huge fan of horror, particularly.
Of horror films?
Horror films, horror books.
What?
Music, radio dramas that are involved with horror. For example, like The White Vault, for instance, Past Horizon. Check them out. They're awesome.
Are they?
Oh yeah, they're Fool and Scholar Productions actually created.
And is that one you're doing voiceover in?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, I've got to plug these shows because I'm so excited about them.
No, of course, and we're going to plug them too whenever we bring we'll do an intro for the show later.
Yep.
We'll make sure to plug them. But
thank you.
So first, let's talk about imagination a little.
Yes. Nabu. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So there was just a knock at the door. I'm not sure who it was, but so Nabu lets you know when
She does. She alert barks.
She does.
And actually, what's funny, I work at Perkins School for the Blind at the Perkins Library, and at work, if somebody comes by my office, she's like, whoa, 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 like she gets all worked up. She barks maybe 5-6 times, but quick, just to let me know they're there.
Can you tell the tone, even down to the smallest level in her bark, like if she's trying to, if she's trying to be like alert you, or if she's trying to let them know that you're there, or like you able to notice different levels of like intonation that she has in her voice?
Yes, I am. For example, if she's startled, she'll do a very quick, short, high-pitched bark. And then if somebody comes by that she doesn't like, she'll get up and walk over to them and just be like, just like growl. And go, whoop, 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 get out.
That's like my mom used to do that when I bring this kid Wayne over all the time.
Just growl.
Yeah, she would.
How dare you? Get them out of here.
Where the conversation gets even more valuable, though, is in her insights on social interaction. Without body language or eye contact to guide her, things as simple as knowing when to jump into a conversation can be a challenge. That's something most sighted people never think about. Her solution? Leaning on a set of pre-programmed 5 questions as a kind of social toolkit shows not only adaptability, but also the anxiety many blind people carry in social spaces. Pair that with her blunt honesty about her online dating, vulnerability in crowds, and the empowerment she found through karate, and you get a picture of someone who has had to construct confidence brick by brick in very intentional ways.
Let's see. So, as a kid, I did notice that the teachers around me did try their best to accommodate. A lot of them just weren't sure what I needed. I was a dual learner, so I used large print on a video magnifier and Braille. And so they were always like, so you use print, but how are we supposed to, what do you exactly need here?
Yeah.
They were so confused. So they were like empathetic to a point, but they were also stressed out because they're like, oh God, we have like 30 kids and we have to accommodate this blind kid. Oh my God, what am I going to do? But the kids at that age, the younger, the better they were more accepting. But then middle school, high school, they were just like, see you later.
Yeah.
But in college, as an adult, I found a mixture of both, where people were really mature and cool about it and interested to know, and it helped that I went to a liberal school as well. But
Simmons, you said, right?
Simmons, yeah.
Now, a lot of pervy dudes just trying to bang a blind gal, or what? Honestly.
Well, there's a lot of that too.
I could imagine, because there's a lot of guys, kind of like different types of styles of stuff, and I just wonder if that, did you get some of that?
I did. I got some of that kind of thing where people were trying to flirt with me, but a lot of the time I didn't pick up on it because I'm like, who would want to flirt with me?
Right.
Like, I guess my confidence was not as solid at that point, so I was just like, nobody likes me. Why would anybody want to talk to me?
Oh man, that must have been such a tough feeling, huh?
Yeah, it was kind of. It contributed to the depression for a bit there, but that happens. All teenagers sort of go through that whole angsty period in their lives where they're like,
true.
My life sucks. Everyone hates me. Nobody understands me. Why am I even here?
Yeah.
But I didn't pick up on it. Like friends would tell me, oh, so-and-so was totally hitting on you. I'd be like, really? How do you get that? Where do you get that from? Well, the comments and whatever, they were staring at you. I'm like, really? Okay. That's cool. Not interested, but that's cool.
And in college, would you get some more pervy type of dudes? I could see a guy just being like, hey, or even a guy not pervy, just very honest, like, hey, I've always wanted to make love to a blind woman. Is this something you'd be interested in?
Yeah. I got, like, when I did the online dating thing for a bit and put on my profile because I was sick of dealing with people that found out that I was blind and then were like, see you later, just ghosted. Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm done with this BS crap. Like, I'm just going to post right here that I'm visually impaired. If you don't like it, like, don't even bother.
Blind AF. That's what I'd put on there, you know?
Blind ever after?
Yeah. Oh, blind as fuck, you know?
Blind as fuck. Nice.
Yeah. Just to be, you know what I'm saying?
Great.
Like, might as well also be progressive. You know what I'm saying? Like, not only am I blind, dude, but I'm so fucking blind. You know?
Exactly.
It's like John Cena. Like, you can't see me, you know?
Blind as fuck until I drink.
Yeah.
Right?
Her bigger message that communication is everything resonates beyond disability. She wants sighted people to stop being so afraid of saying the wrong thing that they avoid engagement altogether. Instead, she urges clarity, honesty, and mutual respect. That mutual part matters. She's not asking the world to carry her, but to meet her halfway. That balance of accountability and empathy is refreshing, and in my opinion, one of the strongest takeaways from this whole conversation. And then there's her imagination, the way she talks about dreaming in color, flying through cotton candy clouds, or envisioning a future where VR horror games immerse you with 3D audio and even smells. That's next level creativity. It shows that her world isn't smaller for being less visual. In some ways, it's bigger. Her voice acting career in projects like Vast Horizons is the natural extension of that imagination, a place where her heightened relationship to sound becomes a superpower rather than a limitation.
Sure, you know.
But actually, for Halloween, one of my favorite games to play with friends was blindfold everybody and then stick their hands in bowls of stuff and tell them, oh, this is worms, when it's actually spaghetti.
Yeah.
Or like peel grapes. Oh, you want to hold an eyeball?
Yeah, you're like, welcome to my world. So does the world feel a little bit haunted since you can't see that much? Like, does everything feel kind of like, is it spooky, or does it feel like kind of like you're in Sound of Music, or like, what does it feel like, I guess?
It depends on my frame of mind. So if I freak myself out in some way by watching something, or I don't know, hearing some story that really sticks with me, and I'm out and about by myself, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna get murdered. This is really creepy. And then try to come up, sometimes I'll even try to come up with a story, or like, even if I do get startled, I'm like, okay, how did I do that? Like, what did I do to get startled? I'm gonna need this for voice acting. So I'll try to bring over those natural reactions and keep it in mind, like, how do I react? And I'll watch movies and I'll pay attention to the actors, how they do it, and what makes them a good performer, and try to adopt it. So I kind of multitask it all. But Sound of Music, if I'm really excited about something, like I'll tell you, when I got this opportunity, I was so excited. The last couple of days have been like, oh my God, the world is awesome.
Oh, that's awesome to hear that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, we were really excited too. You know, we've been trying to find somebody, honestly, we've been trying to find a blind person for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we need more blind people, I think.
Hey, I can recommend some more people if you need.
For me, the most powerful part of this discussion is the way Tanya frames her blindness as a tiny part of who I am. That perspective is humbling. Too often people define others by the most obvious thing about them. Tanya flips that narrative. She's not a blind woman who happens to voice act. She's an imaginative, resilient, funny, horror-loving, tech-savvy creative who happens to navigate the world with low vision. That shift in framing is the heart of her message.
I guess sighted people should trust us to know what we need and when we need help, and just to let them know what it is. And also, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's one of the things a lot of people are uncomfortable with, which I get. I mean, I would feel the same way. I don't know much about mobility issues. So if I were talking to someone with mobility issues, I would feel like, oh, I don't want to offend them. I don't want to ask anything that's rude or ignorant. And it's hard because you're making yourself vulnerable by asking. But my thought is just put it out there. If you have any questions, go for it. Yeah. And the other thing is giving directions. I think people need to get way better at that. It's like, it's over there. Yeah. It's that way. I'm sorry, where? To my right, to my left? And then I just start pointing in every cardinal direction. North, south, east, or west? Which direction?
Yeah. Oh, they're always like, yeah, go a couple blocks till you smell a little bit of skirt steak and then take a left. And you're
Nice.
like, what?
Nice. You're like, what?
What is going on?
By the end of the podcast, it feels like Tanya isn't just sharing her experience. She's offering a mirror to the audience. She forces you to ask, how sense-lazy have I become? How often do I avoid uncomfortable conversations instead of leaning into communication? And how much of what I think defines me is really just a tiny part of who I am? That's why this conversation lands. It's not just about blindness. It's about expanding the way we see or hear the world. Street survival. The conversation between Theo Von and Dusty Slay is, at first glance, exactly what you'd expect from two Southern comedians sitting down to swap stories. Hilarious tangents, self-deprecating jokes, and a lot of talk about pee, fast food, and growing up broke. But just beneath the humor, there's something more interesting happening. A layered narrative about class, resilience, and the strange ways childhood environments shape identity. Dusty's new Netflix special, Wet Heat, may have been the centerpiece, but the conversation sprawled into something that felt almost like a cultural memoir of working-class America, told with equal parts wit and honesty.
See that? Like, I just remember there used to be more disabilities that were normal, I felt like, normalized.
Yeah, like maybe they just didn't know where to put people, right? So they were just wandering around, and, I grew up in a trailer park, so I felt like there was a little bit of that in the trailer park, you know?
Yeah.
You never knew if somebody was just like, real redneck, real country, or if they're just, they got a speech impediment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, dude, even the name Dusty, I remember there were names that were kind of, I don't want to say weather-related, but off like Sunny.
Like a Windy.
Yes, Sunny, Windy, Dusty. Drizzle got into like the black kind of country
Drizzle,
group.
yeah.
But there was others, it was like...
Misty, did we say Misty?
No, we didn't. And
That
was a big one.
Misty was very popular. Misty felt like, I know some Misty, so I don't want to talk trash, but it felt like, it was like they were attractive, but a little loose with it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Like they'd put their bra on, but wouldn't snap it together in the back.
Yeah. They wanted people to see it.
Dusty's announcement of Wet Heat sets the stage. The title itself is a classic Slay movie, a weather joke turned bodily function metaphor, leaning into the fact that he drinks so much water he's constantly peeing. It's silly but almost disarmingly honest, the kind of material that turns the ordinary into comedy gold. His pride in self-producing both Working Man and Wet Heat before selling them to Netflix also says something important about his ethos. He's not just a comic who riffs on trailer park memoirs. He's a hustler who figured out how to take control of his craft. That do-it-yourself attitude mirrors the blue-collar grind he so often jokes about.
Wet Heat, man, that's what you're calling the special.
Yeah, Wet Heat, and it's I like the name because you don't know what the name might mean, right? You don't know. It could be, hey, we're doing a '90s sitcom. There's a little murder, a little sex. You don't know. It could be a buddy cop film that takes place in Miami, but it's a weather joke. Wet Heat, humidity. I go out to Phoenix, and they're always like, oh, I'll go, it's real hot out here. And they go, yeah, but it's a dry heat, you know?
Yeah.
And their heat is better than my heat, right? And I get defensive and I go, yeah, but I like a wet heat. So that's what I tell them. I like a wet heat. So that's why it's called that.
I like it.
It's a great special. Like I had another one called Working Man that's on Netflix now. It's very good. I think Wet Heat's better.
I like that.
I'm very pumped about it. I'm all about a full spec. I got a lot of callbacks. I got a lot of things a couple of themes that come around a couple of times, and I like that. It's like it's like a Pink Floyd album. The whole thing matters.
Yeah, I watched about 15 minutes of it, and I enjoyed it, man. I like how I kind of get in, and then there's some spots where it really just surprised. Like you always know you're gonna laugh most of the time, but there's some spots where I really just found myself just like. Surprise! I can't tell if it was the delivery. I don't know what it is, but just really enjoying it, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's about 70 minutes. So if you watch it 15 minutes at a time, you got about, I don't know. I'm not good at math, but maybe about 4 more settings.
Dusty describes his special as almost Pink Floyd-esque. with callbacks and thematic through lines, showing that beneath the surface level toilet humor is a carefully structured piece of art. It's not just jokes about pee, it's a cohesive story about life, absurdity, and survival. One of the most striking parts of the conversation comes early, when Theo and Dusty muse about the seeming disappearance of cross-eyed people. While played for laughs, it opens the door to a broader reflection on how disability was once much more visible in everyday life. The nostalgia here is complicated. It's not necessarily longing for that time, but recognizing how raw and unfiltered life felt in those days.
Yeah, that's beautiful. But yeah, you don't see it anymore. I just remember when I was a kid, you would see more of that. Didn't you think you saw more of that?
Yeah, I felt like there was always a slower class when I was in high school where you would see them come through the hallway. Mm-hmm. And some of them you were like, I don't know why they're in there. And others you could clearly see why they were in there. Oh, and I feel like there would be a guy with real thick glasses and you would not know what he's looking at.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, just like almost like he should have worked for a submarine, but they discontinued him when they made the technology or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he should be the one on top of the sub holding his breath.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, totally. Bro, the first wigga they ever had in our town, they put in learning disabled, man. And I've I actually talked about that on stage, but and shout out Brian Purvis. I just put some money on his books, actually. He didn't do it. He might have done it, but I think he's in jail now. But they'd never seen a white kid that wanted to be black, and they threw him in there.
Oh, yeah. That's too bad. The guy just had some style and some flair about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he would just be in the hall doing invisible crossovers on all the other hand. So he was just playing just full court offense against the rest of the.
He probably liked that he was in there. He's like, this is easy. This is a dream for me.
Yeah. He probably did, man.
So far to get to the back of the bus.
Yeah.
The richest section of the podcast comes when Dusty describes growing up in a trailer park in Opelika, Alabama. His memories are vivid. Dirt roads, 20 trailers scattered along the path, Laotian kids at the bus stop lending an exotic air, and a friend named Squirrel who had the holy grail of trailer park luxury, an above-ground pool with a Dawn soap slip-and-slide. Theo, true to form, adds a darker shade to the picture, abandoned pools that became hideouts for men sneaking weed and affairs. For two kids in this environment, even overhearing an attractive neighbor having sex became a kind of Cinemax for free moment. Proof that life's entertainment was always just next door.
What was that trailer park like, man? How was the vibes over there? Was it pretty cool?
It was awesome. I mean, I loved it. It was on a dirt road, about 20 trailers probably, some tucked away a little bit in the woods. And then on the front, on the main street was houses. So we had some brick houses. Then behind those was some trailers. And then on the end, 2 double wides.
Ooh.
We had Enoy lived in 1 double wide, and then a guy, he went to a different school, nicknamed Squirrel, and that was my friend. He had an above ground pool.
Oh.
Yeah, so Squirrel had it going on. I mean, his parents were fighting all the time.
Yeah.
But they were, he had a stepdad named Sid, and Sid was always yelling at him.
But you could fight all you want when you're able to cool off in a damn above ground pool.
Exactly.
Fucking heat things up.
Yeah, we would pull out the tarp, and we had a slip and slide going, some Dawn dish detergent, huge tarp in his backyard. I mean, that was where it's at. Squirrel had it going on.
Oh, well, it sounds like he was doing well. In our neighborhood, they had some dudes were over there smoking and getting BJs or whatever in an abandoned above ground.
Oh, yeah.
So something had happened. There'd been, I don't know what had happened, but something had happened. It could have been a gravity thing. Could have been domestic dispute. Somebody knifed it out or whatever. But the above ground, the water came out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then over time or whatever, men would hide from their wives over there and smoke a little weed or something at night or whatever,
I always heard about that kind of stuff, like these kind of things going on. I never could get involved in that as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was I was like a good kid. I never could get involved in that BJ's and the above ground pool situation.
Damn, brother. And maybe that's for the best,
I think it is. It turned out, because the cool kids in the trailer park life, they go to jail. They end up in jail.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Because they got, they're getting into trouble and it seems cool, but
they
trouble.
They don't have a shirt on, they're tattooing each other.
Yeah.
But these weren't just funny stories. Dusty's recollections of tornadoes and ice storms show the fragility of trailer park life. A limb stabbing through the roof and scattering his mom's ceramic owls, or his friend Lucas losing an eye to a falling icicle, revealed the constant precarity that hovered over their families. Survival here was as much a punchline as it was a real achievement. Parental figures loom large in Dusty's recollections. His father mocked him for reading, even while expecting good grades, a contradiction that highlights the confusing standards many kids of that generation grew up with. Learning to drive stick under his father's shouted instructions became a rite of passage, teaching him resilience in the only way his dad knew how, through tough love and loud corrections.
Yeah, dude, I do remember in a neighborhood, like in our neighborhood, like if you got good grades, like that kind of shit wasn't cool, really. You didn't want to be like too smart. You didn't want, you kind of just had to play the game of like fitting in, but not fitting too in.
Yeah, my dad would make fun of me for reading, but also wanted me to make good grades. And I was like, it's one or the other here. You can't make fun of me for doing the homework and go, why are you not passing?
Oh, you can't have your CAKE and eat it too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you spell in front of him, he wouldn't get it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, he would my dad has said, I've heard my dad say, I ain't never read a book. He likes that. It's a brag for him.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big reader, but I've read a book.
Yeah, dude. Oh, in our neighborhood, it was like if somebody could whistle really good, they had fucking clout,
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, fucking get Donnie over here. You can fucking hear. Get him over here. And somebody would go get Donnie, and he'd come down on his bike, and he's an adult with a bike, but he'd get there, and he'd pull up, and he'd fucking have half a can of beer, and then he'd whistle,
It's the weird talents.
Yeah.
It's like you got a little something.
Yeah. There was just something like, but I think it was just like what it was like. That was just the energy around.
Even more striking is the image of young Theo chauffeuring his aging father, who had poor eyesight, 17 miles to local colleges, where the elder Slay hustled students into signing up for credit cards by offering free candies or whistles. It's funny, yes, but it also illustrates the resourcefulness required to scrape together a living. Comedy becomes a kind of survival skill when you grow up around schemes and contradictions like that. Both Theo and Dusty cut their teeth in blue-collar jobs, and their stories highlight the absurdity of low-wage work. Dusty sold pesticides for 9 years, often gaming the system by clocking in, leaving to drink with a girlfriend, then returning to clock out while keeping sales numbers high. His summer, cleaning wishing wells with his friend Alton, is pure comedy. Dusty diving for coins while Alton panicked at the echoes, convinced Dusty was summoning spirits with every splash.
It's on the way there.
You gotta love that kind of help. You're like, I really appreciate that, because then you're good under pressure.
Yeah.
Like I learned to drive a stick shift with my dad yelling at me.
Yeah.
Like yelling at me about not knowing how to work a clutch that I've just tried for the first time today.
Yeah.
And so you're like, now I'm good. I can drive a stick shift for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah, especially when your sexuality's under threat when it came to anything back then. It was like, you don't know how to do this shit, damn it.
Yeah, it's like, this is my first time. And he's like yelling at me. And we're on a back road. There's not traffic behind us.
Everything was a Vietnam back then at times, man. It was, and also the pressure, just growing up, everything felt intense, learning things and wanting to get them right and be cool and know the cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my dad knows how to do a lot of things, but is not a teacher.
Right.
So, you think you're doing it right, and you're like, there's a lot of pressure to be doing it right.
Yeah.
But it's never right.
Yeah.
He's going to tell you how to do it. Even if he told you how to do it and you did it that way, he's going to be like, nah, like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is the way you told me, though. Yeah, but do it like this.
Yeah, we're not doing it like that. I don't know where you learned that shit.
Yeah, we don't do it like that anymore, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, I would tell you a story about my dad teaching me something, but he didn't teach me shit, dude. But he would, once I was tall enough, would expect me to be able to drive in places, right? Because, yeah, I mean, my dad was just so old, and one day he's like, I think you can do it. And I was like, what? And he's like, I think you can drive me to Slidell. And I was like, I don't know. And
how far would that be for you?
Probably 17 miles, right?
Okay.
I was like, I could I don't know, but you want to do it.
Yeah.
You want to support your dad or whatever. And I did it, man. We fucking got out there on the interstate. He gave me some
why would he
guidance.
need you to drive?
He was so old he couldn't see that good.
Oh, okay.
But we had to get there. And so it was like, you know, what are you going to do? You know? Because he used to do those credit card sign-ups at colleges. He'd get people to sign up for credit cards. And he'd get me out there on the table to call them over and whatever, you know, and, you know, make promises to him or something.
Delivering pizzas for Papa John's in high school was, in Dusty's telling, the perfect job for someone who wanted to smoke weed, cruise town, and still get paid. What makes these stories work isn't just the humor. It's the recognition that these kinds of jobs form the backbone of countless small-town economies, and that the people working them often create their own forms of entertainment and rebellion within the grind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long this goes, but he's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does a couple of different things. He does some different stuff. I'm trying to think of any other blue-collar jobs.
Well, you know, I was a pizza delivery guy for a long time. I worked at Papa John's. I mean, that feels blue-collar. I mean, it feels like stoner blue-collar.
Yeah.
That's what I did out of high school. I did deliver pizzas, and it was great. I used to, I was getting high a lot, so it was like, you're riding around your own hometown. You know where everything's at. There was no GPS back then, so you know where everything's at. And you're just getting high, listening to the radio. It's a perfect job.
You ever whip a slice out of somebody's order or anything?
No, I was very anti that, but I would.
And I respect that. I want to say that.
Yeah, I never mess with people's food. I can't do it.
Yeah, me either. I've never done anything like that, you know?
But I used to pick up my friends at the gas station. They would meet me at the gas station. I'd pick them up, and we'd all smoke weed together while I delivered pizza.
The shift to modern topics shows Theo and Dusty's ability to turn current events into absurd comedy. Dusty admits his boycott of McDonald's has less to do with worker exploitation and more to do with just not liking the food anymore. Theo riffs on WNBA fans throwing sex toys on the court, envisioning t-shirt cannons loaded with dildos, and halftime games where fans ring a wiener for a wiener.
What else we got? Oh, in two separate recent WNBA games have been plagued with a new problem: unruly spectators throwing sex toys onto the court. Oh, God. Indeed, officials had to pause 2 WNBA games this week because a person in the stands threw a sex toy on the court. The first incident happened on Wednesday in Atlanta, while the second happened on Friday in Chicago.
Sounds like they're trying to pump it up.
Yeah, they're trying to get you excited. Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham shared on her social media her concerns about people throwing these NSFW items on WNBA courts with an ominous warning: "You're going to hurt one of us."
The news of Matt Rife buying Ed and Lorraine Warren's haunted house brings out their cautious side. Dusty admitting he's not sure that's the type of behaviors we need, and that Theo flatly stating, "I don't really want to walk with Satan." Even here, the humor is underpinned by genuine cultural curiosity. Dusty closes on a surprisingly earnest note. His dream of building a food forest on his 10 acres in McMinnville, Tennessee. He imagines orchards, ponds, and even a self-sufficient communal society where everyone has a role. Shoemakers, farmers, maybe even a methadone teepee for those in need. It's a utopian vision wrapped in Southern humor, a reflection on both his desire for independence and his recognition of how fragile modern systems and life can be. Now, which of these stories can you relate to? Like, subscribe, and share. I'm Mickey V. Have a great day.